Chapter 2136. Half a month later. Yanjing City, Central Earth Province. In a restaurant, by the window, Lin Sun was drinking alone, thinking about his worries. When Du So and the old priest left, they left a jade slip, which recorded some things about Luo Qingxuan, Lin Sun's mother, and Master Lu. Combined with what Lin Sun knew, he had roughly figured out some things in his mind. A long time ago, in order to avoid being hunted down, Luo Qingxuan crossed the starry sky from the other side of the starry sky to Xiao Empire in the lower world of the ancient desolation, with the heaven-accessing realm under the protection of her uncle, Star Bellow Battle Emperor and Master Lu. But on the way, Luo Qingxuan was seriously injured and fell into a long silence. When she woke up, she forgot many things in the past with incomplete memory. Later, she took part in the nation test of Xiao Empire and won the first place. Then she entered Green Deer School to cultivate as a female top scholar. At that time, Luo Qingxuan met Lin Wenjing, Lin Sun's father, and they fell in love. In this way, Luo Qingxuan and Lin Wenjing got married. Lu Boya didn't stop them. He couldn't stop them at all. At that time, Luo Qingxuan lost her memory and forgot too many things in the past. She didn't even remember who Lu Boya was. It was impossible for Luo Qingxuan to know that Lu Boya had established the Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and the Heiyao Shrine headed by the Queen of Eternal Night in the countless years when she had been silent. At that time, Du So and the old priest, who were dormant in Xiao Empire, both noticed that Lu Boya had a special background and talked with him. Unfortunately, Lu Boya didn't reveal too much. He only said that he was just a passerby who came to Xiao Empire to protect one person. Back then, the founding emperor of Xiao Empire had also talked with Lu Boya. Later, Lu Boya became the teacher of Zhao Yuanji, the eldest son of the founding emperor and the father of Zhao Jingxian. When Lin Sun learned this news from the jade slip, he couldn't help marveling. Although Master Lu didn't leave his name in the history of Xiao Empire, he had influenced Xiao Empire too much invisibly. Later, Du So and the old priest knew that the person Lu Boya wanted to protect was Luo Qingxuan, who married Lin Wenjing, the eldest son of Lin family. At this point, everything was calm and uneventful. However, the sudden murder that occurred in the Lin family completely destroyed all of this. Lin Sun had long known the truth of the matter. Although it was Yun Qingbai who broke into the Lin family and seized his spiritual vein, the mastermind behind the scenes was Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi from the divine Sunshine ancient sect. If it were in the past, Lin Sun would not doubt that there was anything wrong with the truth. But when Lin Sun saw the horrible fighting power of the Du So and the old priest in the game of chess, he realized a problem. If the Du So and the old priest knew his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu, how could they have watched a quasi-emperor commit a murder under their noses? In the jade slip, Du So and the old priest gave the answer. At the time of the Lin family's murder, the sky above the Forbidden City was covered by the power of the Forbidden Order, so the old priest and the old priest who lived in seclusion in the Forbidden City had to restrain all their senses and hide carefully. By the time the power of the Forbidden Order dissipated, the Lin family's murder had already happened, and there was no turning back after knowing the answer. Lin Sun was shocked. He was sure that the Du So and the old priest were not lying, because in the whole world, only the power of the Forbidden Order could deeply threaten these two terrifying figures. But there was also a doubt that made Lin Sun feel even more disappointed. Ba Qi was just a quasi-emperor from the divine Sunshine ancient sect. How could he be qualified to use the power of the Forbidden Order? Then, why did the power of the Forbidden Order come to the mortal world? The Du So and the old priest gave their own inference. The power of the Forbidden Order came to capture Luo Qingxuan, who escaped from the other side of the starry sky. And Ba Qi, the quasi-emperor, seemed to be the mastermind behind the scenes. But in fact, he was just following orders, because there was only one person in the world who could control and use the power of the Forbidden Order. That was the nameless Supreme Emperor. This inference also made Lin Sun feel cold all over. Only then did he realize that he was probably targeted by the nameless Supreme Emperor when he was born, and the mysterious disappearance of his parents was very likely related to the nameless Supreme Emperor. Thinking about it, the power of the Forbidden Order came from the other side of the starry sky, and his mother, Luo Qingxuan, also escaped from the other side of the starry sky a long time ago. His mother, Luo Qingxuan, was injured and had been silent for countless years. And the power of the Forbidden Order also covered the whole world for countless years. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? There must be a connection between them. This was Lin Sun's speculation. Soon after the murder of Lin family, the baby Lin Sun, whose spiritual vein was dug out, was taken away by Lu Boya and lurked in the unknown mine prison. According to the Du So and the old priest, the mine prison was built by Lu Boya himself and was set up with mysterious and terrible Taoist forbidden formations. But more than 10 years later, the prison was still destroyed. It was the overmatch of the force that chased after Luo Qingxuan and Lu Boya that year. At this point, Lin Sun finally straightened out the things of the past years. But the truth made him feel extremely shocked. At the same time, many doubts came to his mind. For example, why did his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Lu Boya come to the small world where the Xiao Empire was located after escaping to the starry sky? And as far as Lin Sun knew, this small world was not simple. The young man with golden cicada, the innumerable tribulation emperor, and many other horrible creatures had hibernated in the bloodthirsty battlefield in this world. Similarly, the ultimate of the 4 great ruins of God was also located in the depths of the soul oblivion sea of this world. In the past, the place where Fong Siyuan Mountain was located was very likely in the ultimate, and Lin Sun, who had pushed open the gate to heaven and seen the willpower left by Luo Tongtian, was even more clear that Luo Tongtian had also entered the ultimate a long time ago. And Luo Tongtian was the ancestor of Luo Qingxuan's lineage. This series of fragmented clues made Lin Sun have a bold conjecture. Back then, his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu must have come to the mortal world not only to avoid being hunted, but also to enter the ultimate, because Luo Tongtian, the master of Tongtian, was said to have conquered all the heavens and never lost. But after entering the ultimate, he was frightened by a voice. That voice was from the master of the heart core. For Luo Qingxuan and Lu Boya, the existence who could frighten Luo Tongtian away was certainly a supreme figure. Perhaps the real reason they came to the mortal world was to find the master of the heart core. Of course, this was only Lin Sun's speculation. Perhaps only his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu knew the truth. Master Lu must still be alive, but I don't know where he is now. Lin Sun poured himself a glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. He felt very strange to his parents. Since he was brought up by Master Lu, he had a deeper affection for Master Lu. Lin Sun couldn't be blamed for being cold-blooded. Since he was born, he didn't even know what his parents looked like. How could he have strong feelings for them? This was a regret in his heart. As a child, who didn't want their parents to be around. After drinking the pot of wine, the restaurant became more and more lively and noisy as more and more customers came in. The diners were all practitioners of Yinjing City. What they talked about the most was still the game of chess that happened half a month ago. This sensational event that affected all the heavens did not diminish after half a month. On the contrary, it became more and more intense as all kinds of inside stories were dug out. By now, not only the Hongmeng world, but other worlds in the starry sky were also discussing and analyzing this sensational event. Some people were talking about the heavy losses suffered by the 6 Taoist courts and the 10 war clans. Some were talking about the godlike successors of Mount Heart. Some were talking about the journey to the other side of the starry sky. Lin Sun, who was once a participant in the game, was too lazy to pay attention to these things. After ordering another pot of wine, Lin Sun thought of the message left by the young man with golden cicada. Someone in the dark world is waiting for you to untie the bell. It was just one sentence, and it was very strange. But Lin Sun tasted a different flavor. The word untie the bell was very subtle. Anyone who saw it would think of a saying, "The one who tied the bell should untie the bell." But the point was that Lin Sun didn't know when he became the one who tied the bell, and the one who tied the bell was in the dark world. But it could be foreseen that it must be unusual for the young man, with Golden Cicada's identity, to leave such a sentence before going to the other side of the starry sky. Who on earth needed him to untie the bell in the dark world? Lin Sun thought for a long time. He thought of the divine sunshine ancient sect, the hidden land realm, and senior sister Osa said that second senior brother might be hiding in the dark world. But no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. If there's a chance, I can go there. Lin Sun pondered. Lin Sun had many plans when he crossed the starry sky on the boat and came to the Hongmeng world. For example, returning the bamboo leaf-shaped hairpin of senior brother Xiankong to Jiang Xingque, or finding Boyazi of a Xuanji Taoist sect to inquire about senior brother Li Xianwei. Now, he had already done all these things, but there was one more thing that had been hidden in Lin Sun's heart. It was to go to the Xuanji Taoist sect. When he was in the Dayu world, Lin Sun once asked Yu Qingyang, the emperor of Green Sun Saber, about the ancient Wasteland Fighting League and the True Dragon world. Yu Qingyang once said, whether you want to find the True Dragon world or to find clues about the ancient Wasteland Fighting League, you can't go wrong to the Hongmeng world to find the Xuanji Taoist sect. The reason was very simple. The most mysterious Xuanji pavilion in the ancient Desolation realm was of the same origin as the Xuanji Taoist sect. Chapter 2137. I wonder how Jing Xian is doing in the True Dragon realm. Lin Sun was stunned and absent-minded. He drank a cup of wine, but he did not taste it. Back then, in the ancient desolate region's Star Chest Sea, Zhao Jingxian left with A.O. Jintian and Inhuan to the True Dragon realm to participate in the 10,000 dragons' immortal meet. He, Ahu, Old Toad, Alu, and the others went to the Kunlun ruins to train. Calculating the time, it had already been more than 10 years. We cultivators go against the flow of the world. Time is like a feather, and we don't know the year. Lin Sun took a deep breath and made a decision. I'll go to the divine mystery Tao sect. Suddenly, there was an uproar in the restaurant. A man in purple shook his head and said with a sigh, "That's right. In your eyes, there are only those Emperor Realm and Emperor Ancestor figures. What you care about is the matter of heading to the other side of the starry sky, but those are too far away from us. If I were to say that in this chess game, there's a person who can't be ignored at all, but he's been ignored by most people in the world." At this point, someone could not help but be curious. Who? The man in purple said. Who else could it be? Fangsuan Mountain's Lin Sun. Lin Sun. When the diners heard this name, they were all stunned, and then they revealed strange expressions. So is this guy? More than 10 years ago, no one on the ancient path of the starry sky knew this name. However, with the end of the trip to the Kunlun ruins, this name resounded through the starry sky almost overnight, causing the world to tremble. His ferocious might was monstrous, and he caused havoc in the Kunlun ruins. He killed until all the heroes retreated in defeat, and blood flowed like rivers. No one could stop him, and in the end, he obtained the supreme fortune of becoming an Emperor Ancestor. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the bloody battle results in the Kunlun ruins that made Lin Sun's name spread throughout the ancient path of the starry sky. After that, he was wanted by the various Dao courts, the 10 great war clans, and other colossal figures. He was regarded as the #1 wanted criminal in the starry sky. The entire starry sky was frantically searching for his traces. However, after more than 10 years, no one saw any traces of him, and his deeds gradually fell silent. After the end of the trip to the ancient immortal Forbidden Land, this chess game of chess came to an end. Everyone suddenly realized that this Lin Sun was not simple. He used the identity of Jin Dui and obtained first place in the Cloud States Dao discussion. Like a dark horse, he participated in the Dao discussion held by the 6 Dao courts. In the test, he defeated in the ancient path of immortal mystery realm. Not only was Lin Sun's, but he also was he was not one I want. Huangfu Xiaonong, Kong Zhao, Feng Bailing, Jing Tanan. When you, those peerless geniuses whose names shook the heavens, those monstrous figures from other worlds in the starry sky, were all killed by him. Even Mi Wuya, who had been ranked first on the All Heavens King Sage board for 500 years, admitted defeat in the end. This series of battle achievements was simply like a miracle that could shock the ages and shock both ancient and modern times. And the one who created this miracle was Lin Sun, the future leader of Fengsuan Mountain, who changed his name to Jin Duyi. In the past, Mi Wuya was regarded as invincible in the Saint King realm. However, Lin Sun used a bloody battle to announce what it meant to be invincible in this realm. Unfortunately, after the end of the trip to the ancient immortal Forbidden Land, the chess game of chess played out. With the fall of the emperors, the blood of the emperor ancestors, and the defeat of the nameless emperors, the path to the other side of the starry sky reappeared after these big events. Lin Sun's performance in the ancient immortal Forbidden Land was overshadowed. As a result, there were less discussions about him on the ancient path of immortal mystery now. But there was no doubt that as long as this name was mentioned, people were bound to recall the various deeds of this legendary figure. I have to say, Lin Sun is indeed powerful. In the past, we have never seen such a powerful person. In the future, I'm afraid there won't be many who can compare to him. Is this what they mean by no one has ever done before? In the restaurant, there was a burst of exclamations. The diners were all cultivators from Yinjing City in the Middle Earth State, and there was no lack of famous figures. In the past, when they faced cultivators from other states or other worlds in the starry sky, they all had a sense of superiority and pride. But now, when Lin Sun was mentioned, they could only restrain their pride and sigh in admiration. They had no choice but to be convinced. A young woman showed an infatuated expression and murmured, "If there is a chance, I really want to see this person's elegance." Immediately, someone laughed, "Save it. I heard that this person has already gone to the other side of the starry sky with the other disciples of Fengsuan Mountain. We won't see him on the ancient path of immortal mystery in the future." That's not necessarily true. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. The one who spoke was a black-robed young man who was drinking alone like Lin Sun. He put down the wine cup in his hand and said, "As far as I know, this person didn't leave but stayed in the primordial world. Although I don't know why he chose to stay, it won't be long before he falls into eternal damnation." Their conversation caused the atmosphere in the restaurant to become much quieter. "May I ask if the news is true?" Someone couldn't help but ask. The black-robed young man said coldly, "Just wait and see. It won't be long before the news about the arrest and killing of this person spread throughout the ancient path of immortal mystery." Everyone couldn't help but look sideways with different expressions. Someone said in surprise, "Now, Fengsuan Mountain has won a great victory and defeated the nameless emperor. Is there anyone in this world who dares to touch Lin Sun?" Being questioned, the black-robed young man showed a displeased expression and said coldly, "Those remnants of Fengsuan Mountain have left. Who can protect Lin Sun on the ancient path of immortal mystery?" Remnants. Hearing this hostile and insulting name, Lin Sun, who had been watching coldly, narrowed his eyes slightly, but he didn't do anything. This was Yinjing City, a huge city in the central continent. Tens of thousands of miles away from this city was the famous untainted Taoist court. Lin Sun dared to sit here and drink openly because he was using the Greenwood Taoist body, so he was not afraid of being recognized. But if he made a move, it would definitely cause some movement and unnecessary trouble. He might be targeted by people with bad intentions. If what you said is true, this Lin Sun, I'm afraid he will really encounter a big disaster. Someone analyzed, think about it. In the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone, how many descendants of ancient forces were killed by him? Not to mention others, just the 3 Taoist courts of Qinquan, untainted land, and Panwu will never let him go. In addition, in that game of chess, many great emperors and ancestors died in the hands of those descendants of Fengsuan Mountain. These supreme figures all came from different terrifying forces. This account must be counted on Lin's son. In this case, I'm afraid this ancient path of immortal mystery can't tolerate this person at all. Even if he escapes to the dark world, he will be targeted by the radiant god ancient sect and the hidden land realm. Hearing this, there was a sound of gasping in the restaurant. They were just a group of listeners, but just understanding the hatred accumulated by the blood made them tremble with fear. It could be imagined that if Lin Sun really stayed on the ancient path of immortal mystery, how terrifying the killing tribulation he would face would be. If this world can't tolerate such a peerless figure like Lin Sun, then it's too disappointing. The young woman showed an angry expression. Can't beat Fonsuan Mountain, so they vent their hatred on Lin Sun alone. How sad is this? Everyone showed a disapproving look. Since ancient times, the world had been so cruel. The weak were prey to the strong. The black-robed young man got up and walked to the young woman with a cold expression, with a touch of arrogance and warning. Miss, Lin Sun is not worthy of your admiration. He is an unpardonable madman with bloody hands. Sooner or later, he will be killed and told to the world. In order to avoid misunderstanding, I advise you to be careful with your words in the future. Don't let people think that you are with the remnants of Fonsuan Mountain. The young woman's expression changed, and she was uncertain. The black-robed young man turned and walked out of the restaurant with his hands behind his back. Bill, please. Lin Sun casually threw out a storage pouch and walked out. In the banquet behind him, there was an exclamation. I know, that person just now is the successor of the primitive Dao court. His name is Su Lingjin. So he is a descendant of the immemorial emperor clan, Su Lingjin. No wonder his tone was so confident. So, Lin Sun might not have left. Let's wait, there will definitely be news. Outside the city, boundless mountains rose and fell, and divine brilliance flowed, swallowing and spitting out multicolored light, beautiful and vigorous. In the Middle Earth state, such mountains and scenes could be seen everywhere, which set off how extraordinary the vast world of the Middle Earth state was. In fact, it was only a state, but it could accommodate the 6 Dao courts, 10 war clans, and many immemorial emperor clans. This was extraordinary in itself. This was also why the primordial world was regarded as the first world of the ancient path of immortal mystery, and why the Middle Earth state in the primordial world was regarded as the core of all heavens. All the emperors rose together here, and the Dao Father lived in seclusion here. It was so easy to say. Su Lingjin teleported through space, passed through the boundless mountains, and flew towards the distance. When he flashed past a gorge, he suddenly stopped, and a wisp of killing intent appeared on the tip of his brows. Friend, you followed me all the way from the restaurant. Do you really think I didn't notice? He turned around and looked toward a certain area of space, and he revealed a wisp of contempt. This sort of stealth and concealment technique was really too vulgar, and it caused him to be unable to arouse the slightest vigilance in his heart. Swish! Space roiled, and then Lin Sun's figure appeared. His aura was indifferent and simple. Lin Sun couldn't help but sneer when he noticed Su Lingjin's disdain. This idiot! I haven't concealed myself all along the way. If he still can't notice me, then he's simply worse than an idiot. Chapter 21:38. Tens of thousands of miles away from Yinjing City was the place where the primitive Taoist court was located. As the successor of the primitive Taoist court and the descendant of the Su family, even if an emperor came, Su Lingjin would not be too afraid. Which emperor dared to attack the successor of the primitive Taoist court near the primitive Taoist court? It was simply courting death. What was more, the guy in front of him had been so vulgar all the way that Su Lingjin really couldn't care less about him. Unfortunately, Su Lingjin forgot one thing. The world had changed. In that game of chess, the primitive Taoist court was one of the major forces that suffered the heaviest blow. No one knew how many emperors and emperors died. Even the Su family of the primitive Taoist court suffered heavy casualties. Of course, a lean camel was still bigger than a horse. 4 ordinary practitioners, both the primitive Taoist court and the Su family of the primitive Taoist court, were still powerful enough to make people tremble. But obviously, Lin Sun was not one of them. Therefore, in the face of Su Lingjin's undisguised contempt and killing intent, Lin Sun's response was very simple. He stretched out his hand and grasped in the air. The next moment, Su Lingjin was grasped like an ant. Many bones in his body were broken in an instant, and his chi all over his body collapsed in an instant. He was stunned for a moment, and then he felt endless pain and panic. He wanted to shout, but he couldn't make a sound at all. When he looked at Lin Sun again, his eyes were full of fear. Is the successor of minuscule mountain something that someone like you can insult and insult? Lin Sun said calmly. Su Lingjin felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His pupils dilated, and he suddenly realized who the person in front of him was. But Lin Sun was too lazy to speak again. Like a dead tree that had lost its vitality, Su Lingjin's body turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. This was the talent power of green wood Taoist body, which could control life and death. The next moment, Lin Sun floated away. A few hours later, a ray of light tore through space and arrived here, and it transformed into a white-robed old man. His gaze scanned the surroundings, and in the end, he grabbed a handful of dust. Su Lingjin, his soul has already dissipated. The white-robed old man's face was livid, and his eyes were full of monstrous killing intent. Not long after, the white-robed old man appeared in Yanjing City and came to the restaurant where Su Ling had appeared. With his methods, it didn't take him long to find out some valuable information. For example, the words that Su Lingjin had once said here, as well as his undisguised hatred and slander towards the successor of Mount Innerheart. For example, Su Lingjin once said that it wouldn't be long before Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, would suffer an unprecedented calamity. For example, when Su Lingjin left, there was a person who followed him. This series of clues allowed the white-robed old man to instantly make a bold deduction. It was very likely that Lin Sun killed Su Ling. One had to know that the territory that Yanjing City was located in was the territory that the primordial Tao Court's forces covered. Looking at the heavens, who would have the guts to kill a descendant of the primordial Tao Court? It must be the remnants of Mount Fengsuan. The white-robed old man's eyes flickered. I was just fretting about where to go to hunt down a little bastard like you. But you actually took the initiative to appear. You really don't know what's good for you. Without the protection of those disciples of Mount Fengsuan, how long can a little bug like you jump around for? On this day, the primordial Tao Court was furious, and the headmaster issued an order: search for Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, and kill him without mercy. Immediately after, the primordial Tao Court was like an enraged ancient beast, and all the forces in the territory it covered began to take action. Countless powerhouses went out to battle, and secret agents were mobilized like a tide. The forces of the major clans under the primordial Tao Court's command were also mobilized on this day. There was a complete uproar in the central Earth Taoist province. As one of the 6 great Taoist courts, the primordial Tao Court had stood for tens of thousands of years. Even though its vitality had been greatly damaged in that game of chess, the power it possessed was still enough to make the heavens tremble. Therefore, as the primordial Tao Court launched this hunt against Lin Sun, it also attracted the attention of the world, and countless powerhouses were shocked. But all of this was not over. In the following time, the Qingquan Taoist Court, the Panwu Taoist Court, the Demons Taoist Court, the Tao Fighting Clan, the Black Water Fighting Clan, the Heavenly Ghost Fighting Clan, one by one, the behemoths announced to the outside world that Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, was wanted throughout the entire starry ancient path. Moreover, they offered an extremely generous reward for this. The weight of the reward was enough to make any Emperor Realm cultivator jealous and drool. For a time, the winds and clouds of the entire Central Earth Tao province changed. In the vast and boundless territory, in every city, bounty posters targeting Lin Sun were posted. The murderous aura pierced through the sky. How stupid is this Lin Sun? Why did he choose to stay behind alone? This time, I'm afraid he's finished. Countless cultivators were in an uproar and were shocked. Only then did the world realize that Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart, had actually stayed on the starry ancient path and did not choose to go to the other side of the starry sky. The great forces that were once killed by Mount Mind and Heart have finally found a target to vent their anger on. From now on, Lin Sun is a rat that everyone hates. Some people were excited. If the successors of Mount Mind and Heart were still here, which orthodoxy in the world would dare to do this? Using the resources of the great forces of untainted land, Qinquan and Panwu to target Lin Sun together, it's simply utterly shameless. Some people could not bear to see this, but they could only curse inwardly, not daring to speak out. At the end of the day, the forces of the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 major war clans were still the strongest. The current Lin Sun is no longer the same as before. He's already a Ju Wu quasi-emperor. How many people in the world are as heaven-defying as him? I'm afraid that only a martial emperor can suppress him. But the key is, will Lin Sun wait to be suppressed like an idiot? Given the strength of the successors of Mount Mind and Heart, if they really want to take revenge, which force in the world can stop them? Now that they've already left, they still have no intention of stopping. This is simply deranged. Miwia heaved a long sigh when he heard this news. He suddenly felt an indescribable disappointment towards the Panwu Dao court that he belonged to. From this day on, Miwia went into seclusion and no longer cared about the outside world. When Ju Wu became a martial emperor, he would leave completely. Headmaster, in this world, I'm afraid only our Yellow Heaven Court can protect Lin Sun. In the Yellow Heaven Court, Ling Hongzhuang found Headmaster Tai Shu Hong. After learning that Lin Sun was wanted, there was an indescribable anger in her heart. Indeed, she was once Lin Sun's opponent, but she could not bear to see the way the heavens acted. It was too despicable, too shameless, and there was no bottom line at all. You want the Yellow Heaven Court to help this boy? Tai Shu Hong frowned. Ling Hongzhuang nodded. Hongzhuang, do you know why Qinquan, Untainted Land, and Panwu are so desperate to deal with Lin Sun? Tai Shu Hong said, It's very simple. If this boy is alive, he will be like a thorn in the hearts of these forces, making them unable to eat and sleep in peace. But he's just a Ju Wu quasi-emperor. Ling Hongzhuang could not help saying. Tai Shu Hong shook his head. Wrong. He's not as simple as Ju Wu quasi-emperor. He's also the successor of Mount Fongsuan. He was once invincible in the Saint realm and has a terrifying foundation. If he's given time to grow up, he may become the second Dozhan emperor. And this is what worries those great forces the most. Ling Hongzhuang was horrified. The Dozhan emperor was already so powerful that he could defeat the nameless supreme emperor. If Lin Sun also possessed such supreme power in the future, it would indeed make those forces that were hostile to Mount Fongsuan uneasy. Hongzhuang, after the end of that game of chess, our Yellow Heaven Court was able to protect ourselves because we remained neutral and did not participate in it. This time, we won't participate in it either. Tai Shu Hong said in a deep voice, revealing a sense of inviolability. Although Ling Hongzhuang had already guessed this, she could not help but feel disappointed. Could this seemingly but in fact there was no attitude to speak of at all, really be maintained like this? Ling Hongzhuang sighed in her heart. Outside a huge city, Lin Sun looked at the wanted posters posted on the city walls and could be seen everywhere and could not help laughing inwardly. In the past, he had encountered many pursuits, and each time he had to flee in panic, experiencing blood and danger. But now, how could he care about these things? Back in the Yellow Heaven Court, under the eyes of Fire Spirit Empress and other Emperor Realm figures, no one could see through his identity, let alone the current him, who was already different from before. However, Lin Sun was still surprised because there was a real Emperor Realm figure on the city tower. From the discussions of the people, he quickly learned that this was Battle Emperor of Auspicious Sun from the primitive Taoist court, who had just arrived and was stationed here to hunt and kill Lin Sun. Moreover, not only in this city, but in other cities in the central Taoist state, There were also Emperor realm figures like Battle Emperor of Auspicious Sun. This was like weaving an inescapable net, waiting to catch the fish Lin Sun. They really think highly of me. Lin Sun sighed inwardly. Lin Sun sighed with emotion in his heart. Without hesitation, he entered the city calmly. The moment he entered the city gate, a terrifying emperor realm was swept over him, but soon disappeared. Lin Sun walked into the vast sea of people as if he was unaware of it. In the city tower, Battle Emperor of Auspicious Sun looked calm as he sipped his tea. He did not realize that the fish being hunted by the whole world had just walked right under his nose. There was an ancient transmission formation in the center of the city. After Lin Sun arrived, he paid a large sum of Taoist gems and walked into it. The Shinji Taoist sect he was going to was located in the Fog State, which was 9 states away from the central Taoist state. If he relied on teleportation, it would take at least 3 to 5 months. Lin Sun did not have much time to waste on traveling, so using the ancient transmission formation naturally became his first choice. Chapter 2139. The teleportation formation was like a passageway that dotted every city. Different teleportation formations could be used to teleport to each other. According to Lin Sun's itinerary, he would need to enter 39 cities and use different teleportation formations to reach the mist state. This was already the most time-saving choice. However, he would have to pay a sky-high price of doctrine gems. Fortunately, Lin Sun didn't lack doctrine gems. As an obscure spatial fluctuation spread, Lin Sun's figure immediately disappeared from the teleportation formation. "Get out of the way!" A loud roar was heard. A figure with peerless divine might dashed toward the ancient teleportation portal. It was a young man in a gray robe, holding a bronze lamp in his hand. The lamp oil was as red as blood, and the light flickered, emitting strange fluctuations. Damn it, he actually escaped. When he saw that the teleportation formation was already empty, the young man's face darkened, and he was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Lu Chu, what happened?" Battle Emperor Rue Yang's figure appeared out of thin air. His figure was thin, and his hair was white. He exuded a monstrous emperor aura, suppressing the nearby cultivators into retreat. It was like seeing a god. "Senior, just now I used the power of the blood-drinking green lamp to capture Lin Sun's blood fluctuations, but I was a step too late. He escaped using the teleportation formation." The gray-robed youth called Lu Chu revealed a dejected expression. He came from the Heaven and Earth Taoist court, but he also recognized Battle Emperor Rue Yang from the prehistoric Taoist court. Even though he was depressed, he didn't dare to be negligent. The blood-drinking green lamp. Battle Emperor Rue Yang revealed a strange expression. This lamp was extremely magical. As long as it could collect the target's blood and use it as lamp oil, it would firmly lock onto the target no matter where they fled. Battle Emperor Rue Yang's expression darkened. "You mean that little bastard Lin Sun escaped from under my nose?" Lu Chu didn't say anything, tacitly agreeing. Battle Emperor Rue Yang's expression flickered. He felt as if he'd been slapped in the face. Only now did he react, and his face was burning. The blood in this lamp. He looked at the blood-drinking blue lamp. Senior's guess is correct. This blood came from Lin Sun. Back then, in front of the dilapidated gate to the ancient, immortal, forbidden zone, he was gravely injured. His blood flowed like a fountain, and a successor of my sect collected a portion of it. Lu Chu said quickly, "According to our understanding of this kid, he's extremely good at disguising himself and hiding his tracks. It can be said that he's unpredictable. Even if it's an Emperor Realm expert, it's impossible to lock onto him with ordinary searching methods. But with the blood-drinking azure lamp, things are different." Battle Emperor Rue Yang nodded. After that, he took a deep breath and said, "Since this kid has left through the teleportation array, he must have sensed the situation he's in. We should act with all our strength to prevent him from escaping from the Central Plains province." Lu Chu deeply agreed. On the same day, Battle Emperor Rue Yang spread the news. He immediately received the cooperation of Chaos, Qian Kun, Pan Wu, and other major forces. It dispatched all kinds of forces from all directions. It was also on this day that every single legendary ancient formation in the Middle-earth Dao province was sealed. Apart from Chaos, Qin Kun, Pan Wu, and other Dao court forces, no other cultivators had the opportunity to borrow it. This was equivalent to completely sealing off Lin Sun's possibility of leaving through the teleportation array. Peacock City. When Lin Sun saw the sealed teleportation array, he immediately realized that the enemy had most likely grasped the means to track him. Looks like I can only change my strategy. Lin Sun wasn't nervous. If the teleportation array couldn't be used, then he could just fly and teleport. It would just take some time. Whoosh! The vast universe arc shuttled through the sky. Lin Sun sat on it, meditating quietly. Not long ago, in the ancient immortal Forbidden Zone, his cultivation had just broken through to the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Moreover, unlike other peak Quasi-Emperors, when he stepped into the first heaven of the Quasi-Emperor realm, the divine fire of the Great Path condensed in his body had already fused the mysteries of body refining, chi refining, and soul refining. It should be known that the divine fire of the Great Path of other Quasi-Emperors could only break through to the next level after fusing the mysteries of each path. From this, it could be seen how different Lin Sun's cultivation was at this moment. This didn't mean that Lin Sun's cultivation had leaped to the third heaven of the Quasi-Emperor realm, but that the divine fire of the Great Path he condensed was too unique. This also allowed him to completely embark on a unique path that was different from the world. A quasi-emperor could control the incomplete laws of the emperor realm. This was also the reason why they were called quasi-emperors. But Lin Sun recently discovered that the laws of the Great Path that he now controlled, although also incomplete, were almost no different from the true emperor realm. Could this be because the divine fire of the Great Path that I condensed is too unique? Lin Sun fell into deep thought. If he was able to control the power of the Great Path that was almost comparable to the true Emperor realm at the Quasi-Emperor realm, this undoubtedly seemed incredible. At least in the past years, such a thing had never happened. When there's a chance, I must test it. Lin Sun stroked his chin, a bold idea emerging in his mind. But soon, he abandoned the distracting thoughts in his mind and began to temper the spirit of the five viscera. Today, he already had the foundation to practice the mysteries of the five virtues realm of the Great Path Yellow Court Scripture. If he could successfully practice it, the five doppelgangers, Greenwood, Yellow Earth, Scarlet Fire, Black Water, and Platinum, could have consciousness and cultivation not inferior to the original body. At that time, he alone could exert the combat power of 6 people. The most amazing thing was that when not fighting, other doppelgangers could also comprehend the Great Path and figure out the Taoist scripture. This undoubtedly saved Lin Sun a lot of energy and time on the road of cultivation. It should be known that when Ruosu and Li Xianwei left, they had given their inheritance to Lin Sun one by one, so that he had a lot of inheritance. If he comprehended it alone, he didn't know how much time and energy it would take. But if there were 5 doppelgangers comprehending at the same time, it would be completely different. Therefore, for Lin Sun, the top priority was not to break through the cultivation, but to thoroughly practice the 5 virtues realm. Although Lin Sun had long guessed that the enemy was very likely to have mastered the means to track him, but he did not expect that the other side would come so quickly. One day after he left Yongke City, in a vast desert, Lin Sun, who was meditating in the vast universe arc, was awakened by a wave of power. Walking out of the cabin, he saw a gorgeous divine rainbow descending from the sky, bright and blazing, emitting an aura that caused the desert to be filled with sand and dust. The leader was a sage-like old man, holding a snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand, exuding the aura of the Emperor realm, oppressing the heaven and earth to wail. Behind him followed a group of quasi-emperor experts, each with a powerful aura. In the central Earth Taoist province, where there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers, such a lineup, although not luxurious, was more than enough to deal with a Ju-Shi quasi-emperor. These guys, they came quite fast. Lin Sun looked calm, without a trace of panic. He could roughly guess that the other party had borrowed the power of the ancient teleportation formation to catch up to him in such a short time. Evil creature, let's see where you can escape. The leading old man spoke majestically, his voice like thunder, shaking the surroundings and filling the air with a murderous aura. As he spoke, each of them had firmly locked their aura on Lin Sun, and each of them had an undisguised killing intent in their eyes. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of this. His dark eyes were deep, and he said calmly, "Old beast, tell me your name. Maybe if I'm in a good mood, I'll erect a tombstone for you." The old man could not help frowning. "Now that you're all alone, I really can't see why you dare to be so arrogant." "Won't you know if I try?" Lin Sun said indifferently. The calmer he was, the less calm the old man was. The game of chess had just come to an end, although the successors of Mount Fongsuan had long since left, leaving only Lin Sun. But who could guarantee that the successors of Mount Fongsuan did not leave any trump card for him when they left? "You go and capture this little thing. I'll hold the line for you," the old man ordered in a deep voice. The quasi-emperor experts behind him were all stunned, looking at each other with some hesitation. They were not stupid. How could they not know that Lin Sun was no longer the same as before? He was a real quasi-emperor. In terms of cultivation, he might not be as good as the older generation of quasi-emperors, but the key was that he was a quasi-emperor who had set foot on the peak. The old man's face darkened. "Why? I'm here. Are you still worried that something will go wrong?" Seeing this, Lin Sun could not help but sneer. "Old beast, if you're not afraid, come and fight. Why send others to die?" This sentence was exactly what the quasi-emperors wanted to say, but they dared not express their dissatisfaction with a real quasi-emperor like Lin Sun did. And being called Old Beast by Lin Sun, the old man's face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he was furious. As a quasi-emperor, who looked down on the world and was respected by all living beings, who dared to be so presumptuous and slanderous? "Little bastard, I didn't want to bully the weak, but you took advantage of me. In that case, I'll kill you." As the old man spoke, he suddenly waved the snow-white horsetail whisk in his hand. Crash! The sky was full of white, divine rainbows spread like rain, full of the profound meaning of the Emperor Law. The void collapsed and roared in an instant, as if it could not bear such terrible power. This part of the world also fell into turmoil and chaos. This was the power of the quasi-emperor realm. Just a single blow was earth-shattering and frightening. The quasi-emperors were shocked. When could they cross the threshold of the quasi-emperor realm and remove the word quasi-emperor from them? Lin Sun stood motionless on the vast universe Arkansas. But between his hair, a needle-like flying sword emerged and gently chopped in the void. Chapter 2140. The flying sword was only 3 inches long, which was extremely small. But when it slashed out, it was like a big sun shining in the sky, shining brightly. That sword chi was extremely wild. It gave off a feeling that even if the heavens and earth were to block it, yin and yang were to be separated, life and death were to be placed before it. Let's cut it down first. The divine rainbow-colored light rain that filled the sky with Emperor Realm laws instantly broke apart in the void, like a bunch of straws that had been neatly cut. And the old man standing thousands of meters away coughed up blood, injured by the sword chi, and his internal organs were seriously injured. His figure shook, and he almost fell from the void, his face full of horror. The power of one sword was so fierce. Those quasi-emperors were also shocked, their hair standing on end. This old man came from the Panwu Taoist court and was called Battle Emperor Qingyuan. He was a real Emperor Realm cultivator with the first level of Emperor Realm. Even if compared with other great emperors, the first level of Emperor Realm was nothing. He was still a real Emperor Realm cultivator. Looking at the whole world, he could be regarded as a supreme existence. But now, Battle Emperor Qingyuan was seriously injured by one sword. This 3-inch flying sword was naturally the sword spirit leaf. Although it was a seriously damaged sword spirit, Ji Xian, the Thunder Emperor of Silence, and Junhuan together failed to take it away from Mount Buzhou a long time ago. One could imagine just how ferocious the sword spirit Yu was. Go! Battle Emperor Qingyuan chose to escape without hesitation. He finally realized that his previous guess was right. Although the descendants of Mount Fengsuan had left, they left behind many life-saving means. For example, the sword spirit was unimaginably terrifying. Leaf. As soon as Lin Sun spoke, the sword spirit Leaf had already turned into a ray of light, pierced the sky, and chased after Battle Emperor Qingyuan. Now, we're the only ones left. Lin Sun looked at those quasi-emperors with a bright smile. Since he set foot in the quasi-emperor realm, he had not experienced many bloody battles, except when he killed Jing Tanan, Shang Xian, and several others in the ancient immortal forbidden area. Run! Those quasi-emperors had long been frightened. Seeing that their greatest reliance, Emperor Qingyuan, had fled, how could they have the courage to fight against Lin Sun? All of a sudden, all of them ran away, each and every one of them using all their skills, wishing that their parents had given them 2 more legs. Whoosh! Lin Sun moved in the void, his figure flashing like a flowing light. Every time he appeared, he took the life of a quasi-emperor, and blood sprayed like fireworks. In just a few moments, for older generation quasi-emperors had been killed. They were no match for Lin Sun's one move, and were killed like papier-mâché. Just as Lin Sun was about to chase after the remaining 2 quasi-emperors, buzz! A ferocious sword hum resounded. In the distance, a blinding sword chi flashed, and the 2 quasi-emperors who had fled far away disappeared like bubbles. At the same time, the sword spirit Leaf returned. Lin Sun couldn't help saying, "That old guy, kill him." Leaf's voice was low. It turned into a ray of light and hid in Lin's hair again. Its ferocious spirit was gone, and it was quiet without any breath. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling bitterly. After killing an Emperor Realm expert, Leaf also helped him kill 2 quasi-emperors. Leaf's combat power was too fierce. Lin Sun said in a low voice, "Next time, if you meet an Emperor Realm expert, try to spare his life." Why? Leaf was puzzled. Lin Sun licked his lips and said, "I lack opponents, or in other words, I lack a target to hone my combat power. Ordinary quasi-emperors are no match for me. And in this world, there are very few peerless quasi-emperors, so I can only choose some Emperor Realm experts to feed me." If others heard this, they would be shocked. Using an Emperor Realm expert as a target to hone his own body? If any quasi-emperor dared to clamor like this on this ancient starry sky road, he would be killed in minutes. But Leaf looked like he understood and said, "I see. Then the next time I make a move, I will be more careful." Lin Sun suddenly smiled, and then remembered one thing. "Leaf, now that we have the opportunity to go to the other side of the starry sky, why didn't you agree to leave with Senior Jishin last time?" After the end of that game of chess, Lin Sun had mentioned this to Sword Spirit Leaf. "I'm only familiar with your aura," Leaf said, "and I only believe that you can take me back." Lin Sun was stunned for a moment, and then nodded. This was a wonderful sense of trust, very inexplicable, but Lin Sun believed it was true. Without delay, Lin Sun maneuvered the vast universe arc and continued to move forward. 2 days later, Lin Sun was besieged again and was overtaken by a group of strong people from Heaven and Earth Taoism Court. The leader was still an Emperor Realm figure, known as Sword Emperor of Chaos. Sword Emperor of Chaos was very conceited, even more overbearing than Battle Emperor Qingyuan. As soon as he caught up with Lin Sun, he only said one sentence. "How do you want to die?" It was just a few words, but it showed his strength. But in just a moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos's screams began to ring in this world, like the wailing of ghosts and the howling of wolves. Of course, it was Sword Spirit Leaf who took action. In the end, Sword Emperor of Chaos's body was covered with sword scars, blood flowing, and he was captured alive like prey. The group of quasi-emperors who came with him were all killed by Lin Sun. From beginning to end, he did not encounter any obstacles or accidents. In fact, when killing these quasi-emperors, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel bored. It was not that these quasi-emperors were not strong enough, but his current combat strength had long been far above the level that these quasi-emperors could not reach. What do you want to do? In a valley, When Sword Emperor of Chaos woke up from a coma, he saw that Lin Sun seemed to have been waiting there for a long time. Lin Sun's eyes were faint, burning with an inexplicable flame, like a fierce beast staring at its prey, ready to move, full of desire. This made Sword Emperor of Chaos mad with shame and anger, and his face turned green. Since when did a junior dare to look at him with such an unbridled gaze? At this moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos had the illusion of a virgin girl being stared at by a devil. He felt uncomfortable all over, and his hair stood on end. Lin Sun crooked his finger. "Come, fight with me." Sword Emperor of Chaos was taken aback for a moment, then laughed with extreme anger. Did this little guy really think that he could despise him just because he was seriously injured? He really didn't know what was good for him. He struggled to get up and shook his dizzy head while his gaze swept the surroundings vigilantly, and then he said in a resolute voice, "Little bastard, all you're relying on is that sword spirit. If you want to use this to humiliate me, then you're gravely mistaken. It's just a battle. Don't talk so much nonsense." As Lin Sun said, he flashed in the air and launched an attack. Boom! He operated his own strength to the extreme, and the power of laws intertwined, dazzling, like a python wandering around his body, disdainful and powerful. As he punched out, the void suddenly collapsed, and the rolling mountains nearby collapsed one by one, frightening countless ferocious beasts in the mountains. This was the extreme power that belonged to Quasi-Emperor Zhu Hu. From the beginning, Lin Sun did not hold back. Lin Sun, who had already seen the power of the Emperor Realm, knew better than other cultivators in the world how terrible the Emperor Realm was. Even if a dragon was seriously injured, it was still a dragon, destined to be different from ants. Just like Sword Emperor of Chaos, no matter how seriously injured he was still a real Emperor Realm expert. "You're courting death." Sword Emperor of Chaos revealed a ferocious look, completely desperate. With a wave of his sleeve, the sword chi swept out like a waterfall, surging between heaven and earth, and the sword roared like thunder. In an instant, Lin Sun's fist was smashed, and his figure was shaken and staggered back. Instead of being shocked, he was overjoyed. His black eyes were surging with fighting intent, like a pair of burning suns, and his whole spirit was boiling. Again, he rushed forward, exerting his Tao and Dharma to the extreme, wantonly releasing it. Noticing that the sword spirit did not intervene, Sword Emperor of Chaos completely relaxed. His eyes flickered, and he was ready to capture Lin Sun as a hostage. Boom! He no longer held back and attacked with all his strength. The sword chi around him pierced through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Even if he was seriously injured at the moment and could only exert 20% of his peak fighting strength, the power of the Emperor Realm was still earth-shattering and terrifying. This mountain was shaking, mountains and rivers were collapsing, the earth was cracking, and the clouds in the sky were collapsing. The terrifying power of destruction was like a storm, raging in all directions. In a flash, Lin Sun was defeated dozens of times, like an ant trying to shake a big tree. He looked very embarrassed and miserable, but every time he was defeated, he rushed up again and fought with all his might. The more he was defeated, the braver he became, and the stronger he became. This surprised Sword Emperor of Chaos for a while. He wanted to capture Lin Sun as a hostage several times, but he failed every time. Lin Sun's heaven-defying combat power made him shudder with fear. It should be known that he was a real Emperor Realm expert. Even if he was seriously injured, the power he controlled and the cultivation he possessed were enough to easily kill any quasi-emperor in the world. But now, he repeatedly failed to defeat Lin Sun, a young man who had just stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. How could Sword Emperor of Chaos not be shocked? At the very least, in his countless years of experience, he'd never heard of such a person in this world. However, Sword Emperor of Chaos also saw that Lin Sun could not hold on for too long. Boom! A moment later, at the moment when Lin Sun was defeated again, Sword Emperor of Chaos seized the opportunity and suddenly stretched out his hand to capture Lin Sun alive like a bug. But at this moment, with a bang, Sword Emperor of Chaos felt as if his head had been hit by a heavy hammer. His vision darkened, his consciousness blurred, and he fainted. Before he fainted, his heart was full of unspeakable grief and indignation. A dignified Emperor Realm expert was knocked unconscious by a stick. The one who knocked him unconscious was naturally Sword Spirit Yi. He looked at Lin Sun, who was beaten black and blue and looked extremely miserable. He could not help but worry. "Are you all right?" Lin Sun took a deep breath and shook his head. "I'm fine." Yi asked, "Then, do you still want to target Emperor Realm experts?" "Yes." Lin Sun gritted his teeth. His black eyes were bright and his face was swollen. He said excitedly, "I can feel that if I continue to practice like this, not only my fighting strength will be transformed, but also my understanding of the power of Emperor Realm will be further improved." "Oh," Yi said with a look of sudden realization. "So you like to improve your combat power by being abused. You're really a pervert." Chapter 2141. For others, being chased by the major forces of the Central Earth State was enough to make anyone desperate and collapse. But for Lin Sun, it was better to say that he was still hurrying on his own than being chased. No matter how serious and dangerous the situation was, he didn't change his mind to go to Shinji Taoism sect. Fighting and learning from each other with Sword Emperor of Chaos became a compulsory course for Lin Sun on the way, in order to temper himself and rise to the top, in order to have a deeper understanding of the power controlled by the Emperor Realm. After fighting with Lin Sun many times and being knocked unconscious by Leaf, Sword Emperor of Chaos had to accept a fact with grief and indignation. A martial emperor like him, who was powerful enough to shake the heavens, had now been reduced to a human target. When it was needed, it would be taken out and used. When not needed, he would be knocked unconscious and thrown aside. This made him so ashamed and angry that he even had the idea of killing himself several times. It was such a blow to him that a dignified Emperor Realm expert became a live target of a junior. Since ancient times, which Emperor Realm expert had suffered such a great shame like him? No. If such a thing were to spread, at the thought of the consequences, the Sword Emperor of the Chaos Void had the urge to die. But in the end, he didn't kill himself. It was not that he didn't want to, but he didn't dare to. Those who could set foot in the Emperor Realm like him had gone through countless hardships and dangers in their lives before finally setting foot on the road of the Emperor Realm, which most practitioners in the world couldn't reach. The more it was so, the more unwilling he was to kill himself like this. Sword Emperor of Chaos had an extremely tough and tenacious state of mind. Although he wanted to die of shame and indignation, he just thought about it. Later, he even had an unprecedented obsession in his heart. He must seize the opportunity to capture Lin Sun alive before the damned sword spirit knocked him unconscious. This obsession made Sword Emperor of Chaos learn to endure humiliation and endure hardships. He firmly believed that God wouldn't disappoint those who worked hard, and there would be a day when he could avenge himself. Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. He just regarded Sword Emperor as a target to temper himself. He, the Sword Spirit, didn't care either. Even if he wanted to pay attention to a first-level emperor, he wouldn't be able to. If Sword Emperor of Chaos knew Lin Sun and Ye's thoughts, it was unknown whether he would give up the obsession of enduring humiliation and commit suicide directly. In short, although Lin Sun was in a hurry, he had a fulfilling life. Other than cultivating the great Tao Golden Court scripture and tempering his 5 viscera, he was also looking for opportunities to spar with the Chaos Void Sword Emperor. Although he was defeated time and time again and was in a sorry state, he enjoyed it. More than 10 days had passed in a flash. This journey was not peaceful. On the contrary, it was filled with danger and killing. The enemy was like maggots in the tarsal bone. He could always capture Lin's traces in the shortest time. Then, one group after another began to encircle and kill them. But to Lin Sun, they were like groups of prey that came to him. You would take care of the powerful emperors. As for those quasi-emperors, Lin Sun would deal with them. Unfortunately, from the beginning to the end, Lin Sun didn't meet many worthy opponents. From the beginning, when Battle Emperor Qingyuan and his party fell to the next period of time, the news couldn't be hidden at all. Like a tide, the news spread out in waves and was learned by the various forces that were hunting Lin Sun. Battle Emperor Qingyuan and his party have fallen. Sword Emperor of Chaos and his party have also been defeated. Outside Tiao Mountain, the corpses of Battle Emperor Fengdu and his party have been found. Sword Emperor Feng Sun and his party of the Heaven Ghost Battle Clan have been missing for many days. There's no news from them. It's suspected that they've met with misfortune. All kinds of news came like flying snowflakes. Every piece of news was shocking. For a moment, countless experts felt a chill in their hearts, and countless emperors trembled. For the sake of hunting Lin Sun this time, the ancient powers of the universe, chaos, and Panva's Tao courts in the Central Plains had joined forces with the 10 war clans and the primeval imperial clans to move out together with them for the sake of hunting Lin Sun. It could be said to be an extremely powerful lineup. According to the statistics, there were nearly 20 Emperor Realm cultivators that had been dispatched. The weakest of the other experts who participated in the hunt were quasi-emperors. There were so many of them that they could run amok on the starry ancient path without fear. They had thought that the opponent was just a peak quasi-emperor and that he wouldn't be able to cause much trouble even if he died. But now, after more than 10 days of pursuit, they had repeatedly suffered setbacks, and even emperors had fallen one after another. How could they not be shocked? Emperors were supreme beings that could intimidate all heavens. In the countless years since the end of the Tao battle of ancient emperors, there had been almost no news of emperors dying. But after that game of chess, those high and mighty Emperor Realm experts, whom they could only look up to, fell from the sky like comets. This had already caused all the heavens to fall into an upheaval, and it caused a great uproar that affected the world. Who could have imagined that after the game of chess that covered the heavens came to an end, a bloody incident of emperors falling like rain would occur while they were merely pursuing a survivor of Mount Heart and Heart? The most unacceptable thing was that the one who killed those emperors was a young man who was only a peak quasi-emperor. Only now did those great powers realize that the target they were hunting this time had become extremely difficult to deal with. Everyone be careful. This lad has a sword spirit with him that possesses shocking killing power. Those below the 3rd level of the martial emperor realm are no match for this sword spirit. Very soon, the matter of the sword spirit Yi was finally made known to everyone. The martial emperors couldn't help but gasp. He was only a sword spirit, but he already possessed the power of a martial emperor. Just the thought of it made their hearts tremble. This must be a life-saving technique that the remnants of Fengsuan Mountain left behind for this lad before they left. Quick, ask for reinforcements. In my opinion, only experts above the 5th level of the martial emperor realm can suppress the sword spirit's arrogance. But most of those great figures have already stepped onto the path to head to the other side of the starry sky, and only those great figures that remain have to hold down the fort within the sect. So, how could they possibly be easy to invite? We have to ask for help even if we can't. After causing such a huge commotion, if we still can't kill this little bastard, how will the entire starry ancient path look at us? The major forces that were hunting Lin Sun had a close discussion and finally made a decision. They would ask for help from his sects behind them to kill the sword spirit by Lin Sun's side. The sword spirit? In a cold and dark underground cave in the Panwu Tao court, a skinny man suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was like a dazzling heavenly sword that illuminated the dark cave. An old servant beside him said respectfully, "Yes, it is said that the sword spirit is extremely ferocious. Those below the 3rd level of the martial emperor realm are no match for him. If it wasn't for him, that little bastard surnamed Lin would have been." Before he could finish, the skinny man interrupted him. "I only care about the sword spirit." As he spoke, he stood up. In an instant, it was as if a divine sword that had been silent for thousands of years had revealed its sharpness in the darkness. A terrifying aura pervaded the air, causing the old servant to squat on the ground and almost suffocate. "Tell me the whereabouts of the sword spirit." The skinny man walked out. "Yes," the old servant replied with a trembling voice. "On this day, The ice-devour sword emperor that had been in closed-door cultivation in the Panwu Dao court for 39,000 years walked out from the underground cave with the intention of capturing the sword spirit for his own use. When they heard this news, all the forces that were hunting Lin Sun heaved a sigh of relief and looked forward to it. The ice-devour sword emperor was a terrifying existence that had attained the 6th level of the martial emperor realm. His sword Dao was peerlessly powerful and mighty. When the Golden Heaven Court's sect master, Tai Shu Hong, found out about this news, he couldn't help but laugh with ridicule. The ice-devour sword emperor was an extremely formidable figure indeed. However, he wasn't much stronger than many of the martial emperors that had participated in the game of sky covering, and he was even far inferior, not to mention the disciples of Mount Innerheart. Even the extreme demon sword emperor, Xia Xinglia, could easily suppress the ice-devour sword emperor. It's all because there's no tiger in the mountain, so the monkey is king. Tai Shu Hong sighed and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. With the reappearance of the path to the other side of the starry sky, countless old antiques that had been dormant for a long time had left the starry sky ancient path, and countless martial emperors had embarked on the journey to the other side. Even the Golden Heaven Court, there were originally 9 martial emperors, but now there were only 2 of them left. Compared to this, the other great forces must be the same. When those who had been trapped in the martial ancestor realm for many years saw the hope of breaking through, who would be willing to continue to stay on the starry sky ancient path? Tai Shu Hong also wanted to go to the other side of the starry sky, but he couldn't, because he was the sect master of the Golden Heaven Court. Tai Shu Hong knew that although there were many old fellows who had left, there were also many old fellows who had stayed. The reason was easy to guess. The sky of the starry sky ancient path had changed. In the future, the forces and structure of the world would be reshuffled, and it would depend on which great force could seize the opportunity. You guys, you're not doing this for revenge. It's obvious that you're doing this for the good fortune and opportunity of this boy. Tai Shu Hong revealed a playful look, as if he was ridiculing and sighing with emotion. The might of Mount Heart had shocked the entire starry sky ancient path a long time ago after the game of chess that covered the sky came to an end. On the other hand, Lin Sun possessed the inheritance of Mount Heart and controlled the fortune of becoming an emperor or ancestor. Whoever was able to capture him would be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. This was the reason why so many major forces were mobilized for this hunting mission. Otherwise, who would spend so much effort and mobilize so many martial emperors merely for the sake of venting their anger? Tai Shu Hong noticed all of this, and even though he felt slight disdain toward such actions, he didn't have any intention of joining in. At the bottom of it all, the reason the Golden Heaven Court was able to survive until now was firstly because its resources and reserves were sufficiently strong, and secondly because it had always pursued a neutral attitude since ancient times until now. However, Tai Shu Hong was slightly restless recently. Chapter 2142. Over Canyon. Boom! The aura of battle pierced through the universe and shattered the clouds. 2 figures intertwined like 2 gods fighting. Looking closely, it was Lin Sun and Sword Emperor of Chaos. Sword Spirit Leaf was watching the battle. Seeing that Lin Sun was able to fight evenly with the seriously injured Sword Emperor of Chaos, Sword Spirit Leaf couldn't help but feel surprised. More than 10 days ago, Lin Sun was defeated again and was not a match for Sword Emperor of Chaos at all. But after more than 10 days, he was able to fight evenly with Sword Emperor of Chaos. This progress was simply amazing. It turns out that he is really abnormal, Sword Spirit Leaf murmured. It was undoubtedly incredible that a young man at the first level of Quasi-Emperor could fight against a real emperor who had lived for a long time. Even if Sword Emperor of Chaos was injured and could only exert 20% of his peak strength, it was still amazing that Lin Sun could do this. If it was spread out, the world would be in an uproar. After all, the Emperor realm was like an insurmountable moat. From ancient times to the present, there had never been an example of a quasi-emperor going to cross realms to fight against an Emperor realm expert. But it was obvious that Lin Sun was creating this unprecedented miracle. Moreover, Sword Spirit Leaf could see that although the law of Quasi-Emperor that Lin Sun mastered was slightly flawed, it was almost close to the real law of Emperor Realm. Moreover, his cultivation was beyond imagination. With the tempering of himself in these more than 10 days of battle, his whole body had undergone a kind of rebirth. Sword Emperor of Chaos was like a sledgehammer, constantly hammering Lin Sun, the stubborn iron with the quality of a top Quasi-Emperor, to be tempered and sublimated to the extreme. Of course, Sword Spirit Leaf also saw that this kind of tempering was only suitable for Lin Sun. If it were other top Quasi-Emperors, they would have been destroyed long ago, let alone transformed. Boom! At the end of the fight, Lin Sun's spirit, chi, and spirit were boiling, which made his power rise to the extreme at once. In just a moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos was suppressed by Lin Sun and fell into a disadvantageous position. This scene not only shocked Sword Spirit Leaf, but also made Sword Emperor of Chaos widen his eyes in disbelief. It was shameful enough to be used as a practice target by a Quasi-Emperor, but now he was being suppressed by a Quasi-Emperor. This was enough to drive any Emperor Realm expert crazy. In fact, the Chaos Sky Sword Emperor was almost crazy at this moment, and his eyes were red. During this period of time, he endured humiliation and endured hardships. Was it because he wanted to seize the opportunity to capture Lin Sun before he was knocked out? But now, before he was knocked out, he was suppressed by Lin Sun. How could he bear it? Seeing that the Chaos Void Sword Emperor was going all out, he did not hesitate to make a move. With a bang, the Chaotic Sky Sword Emperor, who was on the verge of insanity, was knocked unconscious again. His body fell stiffly, and his face was filled with grief and indignation. Lin Sun wanted to continue, but he also knew that if Sword Emperor of Chaos went all out, no matter how seriously injured he was, the power he could exert was not something he could resist at all. Letting out a long breath, Lin Sun turned and walked into the vast universe Arkansas. The first thing he did was to start digesting the comprehensions he obtained in the battle just now. Leaf carried the unconscious Chaos Sky Sword Emperor and silently followed. Lin Sun was very hardworking. Even if he already possessed heaven-defying combat strength, there was not a trace of arrogance or neglect. On the contrary, he became more and more diligent in his cultivation. Leaf couldn't help but admire him. In ancient times, those who achieved great things not only had extraordinary talent, but also had indomitable will. When Sword Emperor of Chaos woke up, his eyes were already dim and hollow. He suddenly found that even if he endured humiliation, it seemed that in the end, it was difficult to escape from the fate of becoming a living target. At this moment, Sword Emperor of Chaos suddenly heard Lin Sun's voice. "Leaf, help him heal." Sword Emperor of Chaos was stunned. This little thing was so hypocritical. He must be playing tricks. He sneered. "Young man, do you think you can make me feel grateful to you by playing some tricks? Don't even think about it." Lin Sun took out a rare and peerless medicine, handed it to Leaf, the sword spirit, and said, "Give it to him. After all, he is an Emperor Realm figure. He has been seriously injured and has sparred with me many times these days. It's worth it for me to do this." Sword Emperor of Chaos was stunned again. He felt a little strange at his heart. Did this boy really find his conscience? He was able to discern that the precious medicine was indeed rare to the extreme, and its value was shocking. If he was able to consume it, then the injuries in his body would surely be almost healed. But before Sword Emperor of Chaos could be happy, he heard Lin Sun added, "Don't help him recover all at once. Take your time. Well, let him recover to 30% of his peak combat strength." As he said, he stroked his chin and revealed a heartfelt smile. In this way, we can continue the sparring. Sword Emperor of Chaos was stunned for a moment. It turned out that this boy didn't find his conscience at all. The reason why he wanted to heal him was that he wanted to continue to use him as a living target. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and the blue veins on his forehead almost burst. He was so angry that he was trembling all over. This was too much. "Come on, open your mouth. The Sword Spirit Leaf came over. I won't let you get what you want. Sword Emperor of Chaos roared, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. But the next moment, he felt a sharp pain at the back of his head and passed out again. Leaf crushed the medicine and stuffed it into his mouth. Then he said, "To deal with this old thing, you have to use force. Otherwise, he won't listen to you at all." Lin's son, even he felt that it was a bit rude to treat an Emperor Realm cultivator like this. When the chaotic sky Sword Emperor woke up again, his expression was blank. There was nothing sadder than a dead heart. In the past 10 days, he felt like he had a nightmare. His dignity and pride were constantly humiliated and trampled on. Now, he had no face to speak of. When Lin's son sparred with him again, he didn't move at all. It seemed that he would do whatever Lin's son wanted to do. Lin's son couldn't help frowning. Had the old guy's state of mind collapsed? Otherwise, how could he become so indifferent? "It seems that it's time to change your opponent," Leaf said thoughtfully. "I thought that if the old guy cooperated a little, I would let him go in the end. But now it seems, really?" Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was like a walking corpse, suddenly came to his senses, and a burning desire to survive appeared in his eyes. Leaf said indifferently, "How can we know if we don't try? At least there's still hope, isn't there?" Sword Emperor of Chaos's expression was uncertain. After a long time, he took a deep breath, as if he had made the most difficult decision in his life. He gritted his teeth and said, "Well, I'll believe you this time. Come on, don't you want to fight with me?" He stared at Lin's son, full of fighting spirit. Lin's son immediately smiled and gave Leaf a thumbs up. Leaf transmitted his voice. "This old guy doesn't seem to be unafraid of death at all. The reason why he is so fearless is that he is waiting for me to say this. Don't be deceived by him." Lin's son transmitted his voice. "No matter what he thinks in his heart, in my eyes, he is still a living target." Saying this, he jumped up. "Yes, a living target." Leaf also laughed, which was rare. When he was completely not afraid of the Emperor Realm, with this state of mind, he could already prove the Emperor Realm. What Lin's son lacked now was nothing more than a breakthrough in cultivation. Sword Emperor of Chaos, who could exert 30% of his combat power, immediately oppressed Lin's son into a situation of repeated defeats. This was exactly what Lin's son wanted to see. This kind of sparring and training at least proved that his own strength was undergoing rapid transformation. On the 19th day of the journey, in the evening, ice-devouring Sword Emperor, who was as thin as firewood and had an extremely fierce aura, came. From a distance, he saw a Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was fighting with Lin's son. For a moment, he felt dizzy. Since when could a peerless quasi-emperor compete with a real Sword Emperor? This unbelievable scene caused the ice-devour Sword Emperor to be unable to help but stop moving, and his gaze became slightly unfocused. "I've only been in closed-door cultivation for 39,000 years, yet the young people in the outside world are already ferocious to such an extent." At the same time, Sword Emperor of Chaos also found ice-devouring Sword Emperor. He was stunned at first, and then an unprecedented ecstasy surged in his heart. His savior finally came. As an Emperor Realm cultivator, how could he not know how powerful ice-devouring Sword Emperor was? Ice-devouring. He opened his mouth and was about to shout, but there was a bang on his forehead. The familiar aura, the familiar strength, and the familiar feeling of dizziness all rushed over his body. Then, everything went black, and he fell into a coma. Even the feeling of fainting had become incomparably familiar to him. That sword spirit, ice-devouring Sword Emperor's eyes lit up and instantly locked on Leaf, who had knocked out Sword Emperor of Chaos. His cold eyes did not conceal his desire. Boom! The vital energy in his body swept out like tidewater and covered this expanse of the heavens and the earth, causing the nearby mountains and rivers to rumble and collapse and transform into powder. In a twinkling of an eye, everything here collapsed and the universe was in turmoil. This apocalyptic scene was merely caused by the aura emitted by the ice-devouring Sword Emperor. The power of the 6th level of Emperor Realm was vividly demonstrated here. In contrast, Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was only at the first level of Emperor Realm, was completely insignificant. At this moment, Leaf also showed a dignified look and said, "If it was in ancient times, I could kill such an opponent without any effort, but now, nearly 100,000 years had passed, and Leaf, who was already badly injured, had lost his power over the years." But Leaf didn't explain and just said seriously, "I'll hold him back later. You run away first." Lin Sun's black eyes slightly narrowed. Leaf's words made him realize the seriousness of the problem. Run away? Is it possible? In the distance, there was a burst of laughter. Groups of bright divine rainbows broke through the sky and turned into strong figures. There were many Emperor Realm cultivators among them. Chapter 21:43. The Ice Devourer Sword Emperor was a powerful ally to those who were chasing after Lin Sun. With him around, they could suppress the ferocious sword spirit. If he wasn't around, no one would be stupid enough to court death. Therefore, when the Ice Devourer Sword Emperor appeared, they also appeared and surrounded the area, sealing off the area. The world was solemn and oppressive. The Ice Devourer Sword Emperor was here for the sword spirit Yi, while those cultivators were here to kill Lin Sun. To be more precise, they were here to seize Lin Sun's inheritance and fortune. However, for Lin Sun, the scene in front of him still couldn't make him change his expression. He was still calm and composed. From the beginning of this chase, Lin Sun had never been afraid, or rather, he was confident enough not to be afraid of anything. Therefore, he was either cultivating or sparring with the Chaos Sky Sword Emperor along the way. He never panicked or worried at all. Even when he was surrounded, he was still the same. However, it was very obvious that his enemies thought that he would not be able to escape. Sword Spirit Ye's expression was also unprecedentedly solemn and dignified. He said softly, "If you fight to your death, I can open a way for you. But from now on, you can only move forward by yourself." There was determination in his voice, but also a hint of reluctance. It seemed that he had gotten used to the days of traveling with Lin Sun. Lin Sun's heartstrings were inexplicably touched. He said, "Yi, listen to me. These people are not worth risking your life for." Yi was stunned. At this moment, the Ice Devourer Sword Emperor said, "Come with me. One day, your name will be known throughout the world." His eyes were burning as he stared at Yi, as if he had seen a rare treasure that he had been longing for a long time. A sword spirit that could kill an expert below the third level of the Emperor Realm was too rare. It could even be said to be one of a kind. He was sure that if there was an old antique like the Sword Ancestor here, he would have an irrepressible desire to possess Yi. As for Lin Sun, he was completely ignored. A remnant of Mount Heart, a young man in the Quasi-Emperor Realm, would have died countless times in that game of chess if not for someone's protection. Similarly, if it wasn't for the protection of the sword spirit, it would have been impossible for him to survive until now. Swoosh! What answered the ice-devouring Sword Emperor was Ye's sword. The sword Qi was like the sun that soared across the sky. It was brilliant and blazing, covering the sky, and was boundlessly terrifying. It was unknown how many experts felt their hairs stand on end, shocked by the power of this sword. A few Emperor Realm experts found it hard to breathe, their expressions changing. Sure enough, this sword spirit was terrifyingly fierce. However, in the eyes of the ice-devouring Sword Emperor, the elegance of the sword made him even more determined to suppress Yi. It was inconceivable that a sword spirit could have such a peerless sword intent. It was completely beyond his imagination. Boom! Even though the ice-devouring Sword Emperor was thinking about it, his actions were not slow. He grabbed with his palm, and a wave of sword Qi condensed, turning into a bone-chilling sword formation that whistled out. The sword Qi was dense, flowing with the power of the supreme laws of the Emperor Realm. The sword intent it emitted covered the tribulation with a layer of frost. Buzz! The sword that Yi slashed out was like a fish frozen in a layer of ice, stagnating in the void and then collapsing inch by inch. On the other hand, the bone-piercingly cold sword formation enveloped Yi, and it was like a cage that descended from the heavens and sealed off all of Ye's paths of retreat. Ye's figure flickered and turned into wisps of illusory sword chi, easily rushing out of the sword formation. Wonderful! The ice-devouring sword emperor couldn't help exclaiming, "Wonderful beyond words." Kill. Battle Emperor Rue Yang and other cultivators of the major forces also launched a siege at this moment. Their target was Lin's son. A sharp light flashed in Ye's eyes. Just as he was about to rescue Lin's son, he was stopped by the ice-devouring sword emperor. "Your opponent is me." The ice-devouring sword emperor's eyes were blazing, as if he wanted to skin the sword spirit Yi alive. "Get lost." Yi exuded a terrifying and monstrous sword intent, ready to fight desperately. Although Lin Sun's combat strength was incredible, he was only a Ju Shi quasi-emperor after all. How could he withstand the attack of the major forces? At this moment, Yi was really anxious. For countless years, Lin Sun was the only person who made him feel very familiar, although his memory had been severely damaged. But his feeling was still there. At that moment, Yi did something that no one expected. He resolutely gave up the opportunity to resist the attack of the ice-devouring sword emperor, turned around without hesitation, and rushed towards Lin Sun. So resolute. A trace of surprise flashed in the eyes of the ice-devouring sword emperor. The sword spirit had absolute loyalty to its master, which was what every sword emperor valued the most. But the ice-devouring sword emperor knew very well that the master of Yi could not be a Ju Shi quasi-emperor like Lin Sun. But at this moment, Yi did this. When Lin Sun saw this scene, he couldn't help but be stunned, and his heart was in turmoil. Only then did he realize that he was so important to Yi that he didn't even care about his life. Boom. The world was in chaos. Everyone could see that even if Yi could help Lin Sun out, he was bound to be seriously injured by the attack of the ice-devouring sword emperor. This was like a dead knot that couldn't be solved. In other words, Yi really didn't care about his life. However, at this extremely dangerous moment, a soft sigh sounded. "He's not your master. Why do you protect him with your life?" When a voice sounded, a dreamy light and shadow appeared and turned into a graceful and slender figure. She raised her hand. The sword spirit Yi, who was only 3 inches tall, fell into her palm. Similarly, when she raised her hand, the ice-devouring sword emperor flew back, as if he had been hit by a mountain, and the void collapsed. When he stood still, he couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. The experts from the major forces, whether they were Emperor Realm existences or other quasi-emperors, stopped at this moment, and their expressions changed abruptly. Who was it that pushed back the ice-devouring sword emperor with one blow? In the field, the illusory figure was graceful, and the surface of her body was intertwined with the law of divine chains of order. A rain of light fell like smoke and mist, making her look mysterious and aloof. This figure was naturally she. After she appeared, she looked at Yi in her palm as if she didn't exist, and said with a hint of sadness, "So you're just like me, a pitiful person?" Yi looked at her in confusion. Lin Sun explained, "This is Senior Shi. I just told you not to risk your life. It's not worth it. Why didn't you listen?" There was a hint of reproach in her voice. Before Yi could speak, she turned her head and glanced at Lin Sun, saying, "You still know that you need my help?" There was a hint of bitterness in her voice. Lin Sun's face stiffened, and he felt a little embarrassed. In that game of chess, she was originally going to take action. However, who could have imagined that the senior brothers and sisters of Fangsuan Mountain would arrive one after another? This caused she, who had been preparing to take action, to become a spectator once again. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in Shi's tone at this moment. It was probably because in recent years, he rarely took the initiative to ask Shi for help. Perhaps this made Shi feel uncomfortable. It was like when a young eagle spread its wings. It didn't need the old eagle to protect it like before. Such a subtle change in state of mind was difficult to describe with precise words. The ice-devouring sword emperor's expression was gloomy, and there was a hint of seriousness between his brows. The experts from the other factions were also bewildered, feeling a chill in their hearts. Xi's appearance gave them a bad premonition. Hence, even when she talked to Lin Sun as if there was no one else around, no one dared to act on their own. In fact, they even had the intention to retreat without killing. Yi. She looked at the sword spirit in his palm once again. His clear and cold voice had become much gentler, which was a rare sight. Yi felt a trace of doubt. He could keenly sense that this mysterious and unfathomable woman seemed to have a special kind of protection for him. How about I help you kill that old fellow? Xi's voice became even gentler. However, her words were filled with undisguised killing intent. The ice-devouring sword emperor snorted coldly, feeling nervous. He started to calculate his chances of winning if he went all out. He thought for a while and pointed at Lin Sun. Not helping me, helping him. Also, I don't like others helping me. Lin Sun immediately felt warmth in his heart. He secretly made up his mind to do everything he could to help Yi heal in the future. However, she smiled coldly. This fellow is putting on a strong front. He doesn't need help. This was the first time Lin Sun had seen she make sarcastic remarks about him. He was both shocked and surprised. Eventually, he smiled bitterly. Only now did he feel that she seemed to have changed. In the past, she was like a fairy, cold and aloof, almost emotionless. However, in the past few years, she seemed to have been exposed to the mortal world, revealing some subtle changes in her temper and emotions. Of course, this was a good thing. However, Lin Sun could only smile bitterly. She was grumbling that he had not asked her for help in the past few years when he encountered danger. This was clearly a different kind of concern. What else could he say? He did not ask you for help because he wanted to prove that he was strong enough. Now you are helping him. He thought for a while and said, although I don't understand the relationship between the two of you, I know that only people who are bound by their emotions would do this. Lin Sun was stunned. She was also stunned. The two of them looked at each other, feeling uncomfortable all over. As a sword spirit, what do you know about emotions? She knocked Ye's head. All right, I won't let the enemy wait for too long. I'll go kill him. As she spoke, she looked at the ice-devouring sword emperor in the distance. At this instant, she seemed as if she'd once again become that illusory and misty celestial maiden that was chilly like ice. At this moment, the ice-devouring sword emperor's hair stood on end. The confidence in his heart vanished. He only had one thought. Chapter 21:44. Run. The further the better. In the eyes of the ice-devouring sword emperor, she was like a supreme ruler that controlled life and death. He couldn't help but tremble in fear. Swoosh! Almost out of a survival instinct, the ice-devouring sword emperor fled without hesitation. His speed was shockingly fast. She didn't chase after him. She stretched out a slender and fair hand and gently pinched the air. The ice-devouring sword emperor, who was in the midst of teleportation, was pinched out like a bug. He was horrified and struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. Bang! Finally, as she exerted force, the ice-devouring sword emperor's body cracked inch by inch, like a bug being pinched to death. Blood splattered like a waterfall, dyeing the sky red. The ice-devouring sword emperor was a 6th-level emperor who had been in seclusion for 39,000 years. He managed to escape the chess match, but he couldn't escape the fate of death. All the experts who witnessed this scene sucked in a breath of cold air, and their hands and feet turned cold. She was too powerful. He could decide life and death with just a raise of his hand. There was a stifling silence. All the experts from the major forces were scared silly. Even the Emperor Realm cultivators were dumbfounded. They were already cautious enough this time. When they noticed that Lin Sun's leaf was extremely troublesome, they chose to ask for help without hesitation. They only calmed down when the ice-devouring sword emperor arrived. They thought that this grand pursuit was about to come to an end. But who would have thought that what welcomed them was a disaster? Other than the sword spirit leaf, there was an even more terrifying and despair-inducing supreme existence beside Lin Sun. We know our wrongs. Please forgive us, fellow Taoist. One of the Emperor Realm cultivators spoke with a trembling voice. His face was filled with fear. It was embarrassing for an Emperor Realm cultivator to admit defeat. But who could care about that now? She could kill a 6th-level Emperor Realm cultivator with a raise of his hand. Wouldn't it be easy for him to kill all of them? I finally have the chance to come out. How can you admit defeat? Xi's eyes were cold. His words sent chills down everyone's spine. They had a bad premonition. Some Emperor Realm cultivators even chose to escape. Go! Run! For a time, the scene was chaotic, and the experts from the various forces fled in all directions like birds frightened by the mere twang of a bowstring. Just as Yezi was about to make a move, Lin Sun stopped her. Let her vent her anger, or she will be suffocated. I can't hold it in any longer. In the distance, she suddenly looked at Lin Sun. His gaze was like a sharp blade, making Lin Sun feel cold on his back. He could not help but smile bitterly. Could it be that he was wrong? I do need to vent my anger. As she spoke, he suddenly waved his sleeve, and rays of order laws whistled out like divine rainbows. When looked at from afar, it was like a spear of judgment that came from the heavens, and it transformed into an imposing might that blotted out the sky as it pierced through space and flashed towards the surroundings. Bang! Far away in the wilderness, a martial emperor was pierced through, his body turning into ashes in an instant. Boom! An undulating mountain range was cut in half. An emperor who was hiding in the mountains was also cut horizontally, his body torn into pieces. The group of quasi-emperors who were fleeing suddenly felt their vision darken as they were engulfed by the power of laws, their bodies and souls destroyed. On the other side, this series of killings took place almost instantaneously, and it was so fast that it was shocking to the world. No matter who the enemy was, no matter how high their cultivation was, and no matter where they escaped to, they were all killed almost at the same time. In short, when Xi's attack fell, between heaven and earth, all the experts from the major forces were slaughtered on the spot. Dense and scarlet-red blood tainted this expanse of mountains and rivers that had changed beyond recognition, and it was like a blood-colored purgatory had appeared in the world. Lin Sun was stunned, and the shock in his heart was like a raging sea. One blow killed all the enemies. If he had not seen that scene with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. Since when did martial emperors become so fragile? Yezi was startled and could not help looking at Xi, saying, "You are much more powerful than me." Xi raised his hand and held Yezi in his palm, carefully rubbing his little head with his fingertips, and said softly, "When you recover from your injury, you can also be as powerful." Then she looked at Lin Sun. "How do you feel?" Lin Sun said, subconsciously, "Strong, incredibly strong." "How do you compare to your senior brothers and sisters?" These words jolted Lin Sun out of his shock. He looked at Xi. Her figure was graceful, and the rain of light flowed around her. She was like an ethereal and cold fairy. However, no matter how hard Lin Sun tried, he could not see her face clearly. Naturally, he could not see her expression. "We each have our own advantages." Lin Sun gave a vague answer. "Oh," she said, "from today onwards, I'll be a live target to spar with you. This way, you will know who is stronger between me and your senior brothers and sisters." This was not a question, but a decision. Although Xi's voice was calm, it was unquestionable. Lin Sun suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He quickly said, "Senior, it's enough to have Sword Emperor of Chaos to practice with me." She frowned. "You think I'm not as good as Chaos Sword Emperor?" Lin Sun shook his head. "How would I dare? It's just that," she interrupted, "you are just worried that I will be targeted by the Forbidden Order power? Don't worry. The so-called Nameless Supreme Emperor has already been defeated." Lin Sun was speechless. He increasingly felt that there was something wrong with Xi's enthusiasm. Lin Sun made a final struggle and said, "But I heard that the next Nameless Supreme Emperor is coming soon." She said indifferently, "Then let's wait for him to come." Lin Sun wanted to say something, but she interrupted, "It's decided. Go and collect the spoils first. I have something to say to Yezi." Lin Sun smiled bitterly. Xi's change made it hard for him to adapt. Lin Sun shook his head and walked into the distance. This time, Qinquan, Untainted Land, Panwu, and the other major forces had sent a huge force. There were nearly 20 martial emperors. Up until now, Lin Sun had successively obtained extremely abundant spoils of war. There were all sorts of emperor artifacts, various divine materials, medicinal pills, rare treasures, and spiritual objects. Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp when he counted the trophies on the battlefield one by one. The harvest was huge. The treasures could be piled up into a small mountain, and none of them were ordinary. Thinking about it, the weakest of the enemies was at the quasi-emperor realm, and the stronger ones were at the martial emperor realm. How could the treasures they had be ordinary? This once again proved the unbreakable truth since ancient times. No one would be rich without a windfall. The news of Ice devouring Sword Emperor, Auspicious Sun Sword Emperor, and the other major forces experts being killed spread quickly. It was like a bloody storm that shook the entire Hongmeng world. How can a remnant of Mount Fengsuan have such heaven-defying killing power? Someone's heart trembled. This time, those high and mighty major forces have suffered a huge setback. Do they really think that the disciples of Mount Fengsuan are easy to bully? Someone gloated. Today's world is different. The entire starry sky ancient path will be reshuffled. If those major forces still think highly of themselves, they will only fall more miserably, someone sighed. The world had really changed. In the past, Qianquan, Untainted Land, Panwu Taoist Court, and other forces were like supreme existences. No one dared to provoke or slander them. Even a random descendant of their sect would receive the respect of a myriad of stars surrounding the moon when they walked out. Yet now, along with the end of the game and the defeat of Imperial Exalt Nameless, the foundations of those great powers had suffered a heavy blow a long time ago. Their vitality was greatly damaged, and they were in a precarious situation. The power and influence they possessed in the past had fallen to rock bottom. At this time, the bad news that Ice-devouring Sword Emperor and other experts of major forces had been killed came out, which made the momentum of those major forces even more declining. On this starry sky ancient path, is Lin Sun really invincible? Perhaps only Emperor Ancestor Realm existences can suppress this kid's arrogance. There were also many experts who had mixed feelings and sighed with emotion. When he learned this news, Tai Shu Hong of Black Yellow Taoist Court was not surprised. Since those successors of Mount Fengsuan dared to leave Lin Sun alone, how could they not have prepared a life-saving means for him? Unfortunately, Tai Shu Hong also guessed wrong. According to the War Emperor and others, giving Lin Sun a life-saving means would only do more harm than good, which was not conducive to his future cultivation. Therefore, they didn't give Lin Sun any life-saving means. However, with the existence of Sword Spirit Leaf and Shi, Lin Sun didn't need these at all. 10 days later, the world was clear and the wind was gentle. In front of a green lake with willows, with a bang, a figure fell into the lake like a falling meteorite, splashing thousands of waves. When the figure had just emerged from the lake with great difficulty, a palm force had already struck him from afar, causing his entire body to sink once again. Is he all right? By the lake, Sword Spirit Leaf squatted on a green lotus leaf, looking worried. Don't worry, I have my own power. This world has been covered by my power. Even a flower, a grass, a sand, and a stone here will not be damaged. Beside her, she sat leisurely on the branch of a willow tree. Her figure was graceful and ethereal, and the bright light rain was flowing, making her look dreamy. Leaf couldn't help saying, I mean him, not those flowers and grass. She said casually, he is thick-skinned and has never been afraid of death, so he must be fine. After all, this time I acted as a live target to accompany him to practice. Bang! As she spoke, she raised her hand and pointed gently. Lin Sun, who struggled to get up from the lake, was pressed down again and fell into the water. A drowned chicken and a drowned dog are nothing more than this. Leaf couldn't bear to watch it anymore. Over the past 10 days, she would take the initiative to practice with Lin Sun almost every few hours. Every time, Lin Sun would be tortured to death, even begging for mercy. Even if Leaf was just a sword spirit and a spectator, he was still frightened after witnessing the blows Lin Sun suffered in the practice these days. Once a woman was strong enough, she would be a man's nightmare. thanks to Blue Feather Breeze, Boss Phone, Bailing, and other children for their gifts. Chapter 2145. When this competition was over, Lin Sun was lying on the lake grass like a salted fish, his eyes hollow. He was a supreme emperor-to-be with an unimaginably strong foundation. The laws of emperor-to-be he mastered were almost the same as those of a real emperor realm expert. However, in the past few days, Xiao Chun had been beaten up like a salted fish every time he sparred with Shi. Every method he used to resist was futile. What was despair? Lin Sun finally realized it. It was not until a long time later that Lin Sun recovered from the feeling of powerlessness and numbness. He had already rushed to Lin Sun. She broke off a handful of precious herbs and stuffed them into Lin's mouth. Lin Sun's physical strength was already on the verge of exhaustion. He didn't even have the strength to lift his fingers. Senior, this kind of competition is almost over, right? After a long time, feeling the new power emerging in his body, Lin Sun turned his head with difficulty and looked at Shi sitting on the willow branch. Well, what's the hurry? When a new nameless Supreme Emperor comes, the competition will end. Shi's voice was indifferent. Lin Sun's eyes darkened. If the new nameless Supreme Emperor didn't come, wouldn't he be ravaged, tortured, and destroyed like this in the future? Lin Sun, you've broken through, Yi suddenly said with a hint of amazement. Lin Sun was stunned. He couldn't help feeling the wonderful changes that were taking place in his body. Just like this, I broke through. His eyes were in a trance again. Last time, before he broke through and stepped into the peak of Emperor-to-be, he experienced a rare bloody killing in front of the Gate of Ruin. Finally, he released all his strength at the risk of serious injuries and finally entered the Gate of Ruin. That time, he broke through in a coma. Now, only a little more than a month had passed since the last time, but his cultivation changed again, and he stepped into the second level of the Supreme Emperor-to-be. Such a rapid and unparalleled speed of advancement was so shocking that even Lin Sun himself felt it was incredible. 10 days ago, you sparred with the Chaos Sword Emperor a total of 19 times. The first 15 times ended in defeat. After the 15th time, you started to turn the tables and gained the strength to suppress the Chaos Sword Emperor. However, after the Chaos Void Sword Emperor unleashed 30% of his combat strength, you were once again suppressed and defeated. Even though this sort of spar causes you to lose repeatedly, it allows you to obtain extreme tempering in battle, and your cultivation and combat strength have obtained unprecedented consolidation and transformation. During these 10 days, she sparred with you 10 times. Each time, he forced you to use everything you had, squeezing out all your strength before stopping. This just happens to be like rebirth time after time, and it allows your strength to undergo a transformation that's akin to joy after extreme misfortune. At this point, Yi said in admiration, what's rare is that Shi's strength is just right every time he attacks. If he's slightly stronger, he'll damage your Dao foundation, and if he's slightly weaker, you won't be able to unleash your full potential. Such methods can be said to be exquisite to the extreme. Lin Sun was stunned. Now that you mention it, do I have to be grateful? Yi said seriously, it's only been about a month, and your cultivation has made a breakthrough. If it were other practitioners, they would have been so happy that they would have kowtowed to you. Feeling the constant transformation in his body, Lin Sun felt strange in his heart. Was it for his own good that he had been abused for so many days? Was it really not just to vent his anger in the name of sparring? He said, of course, during this period of time, you've consumed a total of 76 kinds of peerless treasures, each of which is invaluable. Ordinary emperors don't have the luck to enjoy them. Fortunately, you're well off. Otherwise, it would be difficult for you to make a breakthrough in such a short time. Today, Lin Sun was indeed rich. The spoils of war that he had plundered during this period of time could be described as massive and innumerable. It should be known that in the forbidden area of ancient immortals, he also obtained a lot of spoils of war, including some treasures that even emperors coveted. Therefore, even if he knew that he had consumed so many peerless treasures, he didn't feel distressed. At this moment, he had completely recovered. He sat cross-legged in meditation to consolidate the new power he had after the breakthrough. After hesitating for a moment, Yi said, "So, I suggest that we continue the sparring." Lin Sun's lips twitched fiercely. The last 10 days were simply like a nightmare. It wasn't just his body that was suppressed. Even his state of mind and soul were suffering strikes of despair and powerlessness at all times. Even Lin Sun, who had a tough temperament, couldn't bear that kind of feeling. But when he thought that this kind of sparring could make his cultivation transform in the shortest time, Lin Sun hesitated for a moment and then gritted his teeth and agreed. He couldn't help admiring in his heart. Sure enough, he likes to be abused to practice. She glanced at Lin Sun and said, "Since you made a breakthrough, I'll increase my strength in the sparring. You should be prepared." Lin Sun's heart thumped, and he couldn't help asking, "Senior, how much of your strength did you use when we sparred before? How much?" She's voice was a little strange. He thought for a moment and said seriously, "According to my speculation, it should be far less than 10%. Lin Sun, Fog State. As one of the 49 prefectures in the primordial world, the Fog Spirit State's territory was neither the largest nor the smallest. The cultivation forces in the Fog Spirit State were neither the strongest nor the weakest. In short, Fog State was very ordinary. It was neither outstanding nor inferior to other states in any aspect. It was very mediocre. Shinji Daoist sect was located in Fog State. It had a very old foundation, but its power could only rank among the top 10 in Fog State. After more than 10 days, Lin Sun arrived at Fog State smoothly and came to the blessed land where Shinji Daoist sect was located, Tong Mountain. But when Lin Sun arrived, he suddenly found that there was no one in this famous blessed land in Fog State. Moreover, the gate of Shinji Daoist sect was open, and the formation covering the mountain stopped working. When he walked in, he saw that the row upon row of ancient buildings were empty, and there were signs of disorder everywhere. Lin Sun searched for a long time and almost searched the inside and outside of Shinji Daoist sect. Finally, he confirmed that all the cultivators of Shinji Daoist sect should have evacuated from Tong Mountain. They were obviously in a hurry when they left. They didn't even have time to clean up some magic herbs in the herb garden. There was no trace of fighting in the field, which could only prove that the cultivators of Shinji Daoist sect had evacuated voluntarily. As for the reason, Lin Sun couldn't guess. "This is troublesome," Lin Sun frowned. At this time, he was standing in front of a desolate ancient palace alone. The setting sun cast a long shadow on the mottled bluestone slabs. Shinji Pavilion and Shinji Daoist sect had the same origin. Lin Sun came here to inquire about some matters about going to the True Dragon World. But he didn't expect that such an ancient force would disappear in such a strange way, leaving only an empty Tong Mountain. The evacuation of a sect will definitely cause a big commotion. There will definitely be some signs beforehand. Lin Sun muttered to himself. He planned to go to the nearest city to Tong Mountain and inquire about it. But just as he was about to leave, his heart suddenly trembled. He felt a fatal and dangerous aura. Almost at the same time, she appeared quietly. She gently picked him up and brought him to the eaves of a distant palace. "A powerful person has appeared. Don't speak." She's body was surrounded by a rain of light, which turned into a mysterious power that covered her and Lin Sun. It was as if the two of them had disappeared in a thin air. Whoosh, there was a fluctuation in the void in front of the palace where Lin Sun had been standing. Several figures appeared. There were men and women. Although their auras had been restrained, they still carried a formless and terrifying aura. They stood under the afterglow of the setting sun like gods standing in the dusk. Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank when he saw the figure in the lead. The memories that had been dormant in his heart for many years were awakened. The person in the lead was a woman in a purple robe. She was extremely slender and had a golden ribbon around her slender waist. Her long purple hair hung down like a waterfall and glowed with an enchanting luster. She carried a spear on her back. Her purple robe and purple hair made her look like a natural moat. People could only look up to her. Facing her figure was like an ant looking up at the sky. It's the woman in purple who chased after Master Lu. Lin Sun was shocked. How could he forget this woman? Years ago, he had returned to the mortal world and returned to the courtyard where he used to live in Feiyun village. It was also there that he accidentally saw a wisp of willpower left by Master Lu. It was also this wisp of willpower that allowed Lin Sun to see the woman in purple who chased after Master Lu. It also let Lin Sun know that the woman in purple came from the other side of the starry sky to hunt down his mother Luo, Qingxuan, and Master Lu. However, Lin Sun had never expected to see this woman in purple in the empty Shinji Taoist sect. It was inconceivable. I want to go to the world of True Dragon, but the sect that knows the way to the world of True Dragon has disappeared overnight. In front of the palace, the woman in purple spoke. Her voice was very pleasant, but it was cold and indifferent. The three men who were following her were trembling, and expressions of fear and panic appeared on their faces. Senior, we didn't leak any information. Even we don't know why all the people of Shinji Taoist sect disappeared. Please don't misunderstand. A white-haired old man explained anxiously. The woman in purple patted the old man's shoulder and said, I don't care about misunderstandings. I only care about why this happened. Do you understand? Chapter 2146. In the distance, Lin Sun's pupils suddenly narrowed. The white-haired old man was clearly a true Emperor Realm cultivator. But in the blink of an eye, he was annihilated. The most terrifying thing was that the purple-clothed woman had merely patted the old man's shoulder from the beginning to the end. It was so casual and casual. But the more it was so, the more chilling it was. Just like the white-haired old man, the remaining two were also Emperor Realm cultivators. When they witnessed this scene, their faces turned pale and were filled with fear. Go find out the whereabouts of the powerhouses of the divine mechanism Taoist sect. Give me 7 days. After 7 days, I need clues to head to the True Dragon world. The purple-clothed woman looked at a gray-robed, middle-aged man. You can try to escape, but your clan and friends will be buried with you. Yes. The gray-robed, middle-aged man's expression was uncertain. He gritted his teeth and left. Before the purple-clothed woman could speak, the man in luxurious clothes said quickly, Senior, I've already found out that Lin Sun, the survivor of Mount Fonsuan, doesn't belong to this world. He's from the ancient Desolation Realm. Oh, the purple-clothed woman said. Obviously, she was not satisfied with such a simple answer. The man in luxurious clothes' heart trembled, and he said quickly, Lin Sun once caused a ruckus in the Kunlun ruins. But before that, there was no such person on the starry ancient path. Moreover, I once asked a friend from the Hidden Land realm, and he said that Lin Sun once cultivated in the ancient Desolation realm. In the distance, a trace of gloominess appeared on Lin Sun's face. This purple-clothed woman was actually trying to find out something related to him. Didn't this mean that it was very likely that she had already found out about his identity? As expected, when the man in luxurious clothes finished speaking, the purple-clothed woman said, So, this survivor is really that bitch's flesh and blood. There was a trace of rare excitement in her voice, like a beast that had its eyes on its prey. Where is he? The purple-clothed woman asked. A while ago, he was chased by all the major forces in the Central Plains. The man in luxurious clothes answered without hesitation. Obviously, he was prepared. He told her about the incident that happened a while ago. They're all dead. When she found out about the final outcome of this pursuit, the violet-clothed woman couldn't help but be stunned, and then she revealed a contemplative expression. Yes, according to the analysis of the outside world, Lin Sun should have a lot of life-saving trump cards in his hands. Ordinary emperors are no match for him. Then do you know where he is now? The purple-clothed woman said. The well-dressed man shook his head. Since the failure of the hunt, no one knows the news about Lin Sun. No one knows where he went. The purple-clothed woman fell into deep thought. After a long time, she said, Go and find out where this child is. I want a satisfactory answer in 7 days. The well-dressed man said in a trembling voice, What if I can't find anything? The purple-clothed woman glanced at him but didn't say anything. However, The well-dressed man had already realized the terrifying consequences. His expression was gloomy, and only after a long time did he speak bitterly. He agreed, turned around, and left. The purple-robed woman was the only one left in front of the ancient palace. Whoosh! An illusory figure suddenly condensed on her shoulder. It was only a foot tall, and it was covered in a black, forbidden aura. Its appearance was extremely vague. When she, who had been watching coldly, saw this person, his eyes couldn't help but narrow. Star Spill, do you still care about a useless remnant of Mount Heart at a time like this? The illusory figure roared. Hurry up and take me away. Return to the clan. Otherwise, this seat will completely perish. He seemed extremely irritable and angry. However, the purple-clothed woman called Star Spill said calmly, Ninth Granduncle, your cultivation and original body have long been killed by the Battle Emperor. If I hadn't saved you, your extremely weak remnant soul wouldn't have been able to survive. After a pause, she continued, Moreover, even if I take you back to the clan now, with the clan's power, it's impossible for you to recover. Star Spill, how dare you curse me? The blurry figure roared furiously. If it wasn't for me back then, how could a little slut like you have leaped through the dragon's gate and been valued by the clan leader? Star Spill was expressionless. Ninth Granduncle, a loose tongue can cause trouble. You should calm down and think about your current situation. Those people in the clan probably already think that you're completely dead. Tell me, if I accidentally erase your remnant soul, what kind of punishment will I suffer? The blurry figure immediately fell silent. Ninth Granduncle, in the primordial era, I received orders to come to this ancient path. Until now, I still haven't completed the mission. Do you think I don't want to return to the clan? Star Spill said to himself. You know better than anyone else that if I don't complete the mission, even if I return, what awaits me is the harshest punishment. The blurry figure's voice was hoarse. What exactly do you want to do? You don't need to understand. You just need to follow me. Star Spill's voice was indifferent. If I'm not wrong, in another month or so, a big shot like you will come to this ancient path and regain control of the forbidden power of order that covers the heavens. At that time, it will be time to pull in the net. The next moment, she and the blurry figure disappeared. Only the setting sun shone on the boundless world. Rows upon rows of ancient buildings were empty, desolate, and quiet. Lin Sun saw all of this. His heart was in turmoil, and he couldn't calm down. He was sure that the clan that his mother, Luo, Qingshuan, and the others had to escape from on the other side of the starry sky a long time ago was from this purple-clothed woman called Star Spill's clan. She suddenly asked, Do you know who that remnant soul was? Being reminded, Lin Sun realized something. He was startled and said, Could it be the nameless supreme sovereign? Yes, it's him, she said coldly. She's voice was cold. In the ancient desolation realm, every time I walked out of the heaven accessing place, I was attacked by the forbidden power of order controlled by this person. I didn't expect that he would leave a remnant soul after being killed by your eldest senior brother. Lin Sun's expression changed. The murderer who chased after his mother, Luo Qingshuan, and the others came from the same clan as the Nameless Supreme Sovereign and called the Nameless Supreme Sovereign the Ninth Granduncle. For a moment, Lin Sun thought of many things in the past. According to that woman, a new Nameless Supreme Sovereign will appear in a month. She's voice was rare with a trace of seriousness. A month. The ancient path of the starry sky would be covered by the shadow of the forbidden power of order again. What kind of upheaval would happen at that time? There was no doubt that the new Nameless Supreme Sovereign would definitely avenge the Ninth Granduncle, and it was very likely that his target would fall on Lin Sun. As early as in primitive times, the woman called Star Spill came to kill my mother and Master Lu. She came to Shinji Taoist sect to go to the true dragon world. Does this mean that my mother and Master Lu are very likely to be in the true dragon world? Lin Sun suddenly said. She said, It's possible, but I think that if she knows your whereabouts, she will definitely give up the plan to go to the true dragon world and come to deal with you. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. He knew that she was right. When he saw the scenes created by the imprint of will left by Lu Boya, Lin Sun knew that he, who possessed the complete devouring spirit vein of the great abyss, was the most urgent target of Star Spill. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun said, "Senior, I plan to find the practitioners of Shinji Taoist sect. If I can rush to the True Dragon world before Star Spill, I may be able to resolve some of the disasters." She nodded. She had been guarding the heaven-accessing place for countless years. She had seen Lu Boya and the terrifying willpower left by Luo Tongtian, the master of sky-reaching. Of course, she knew Lin Sun's identity and origin better than anyone else. On this day, Lin Sun and she walked along Tong Mountain to the nearby cities, making inquiries along the way. To Lin Sun's surprise, no matter how he inquired, no one knew what had happened to an ancient orthodoxy like Shinji Taoist sect. Naturally, no one knew where the successors of Shinji Taoist sect had gone. Unknowingly, 7 days had passed. Lin Sun still found nothing. This made him realize that Shinji Taoist sect must have sensed danger in advance. That was why they had disappeared without anyone noticing. Lin Sun and she returned to Tong Mountain again. Unlike 7 days ago, the empty mountain gate of Shinji Taoist sect was already filled with the figures of countless practitioners. It was as if they had entered a treasure house and were searching everywhere for the treasures left behind in this blessed land. After all, Shinji Taoist sect had completely disappeared. The place where they occupied was a top-notch blessed land in the world. Many practitioners would definitely target it. It was even to the extent that there was no lack of powers that intended to occupy this famed mountain paradise by force, and they were eager to make a move. I wonder if Star Spill has found the successor of Shinji Taoist sect. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun frowned. He realized that it was impossible for the Star Destroyer to appear here again. After a long time, Lin Sun shook his head and turned to leave. On the way, he thought of something. In about half a month, a new Supreme Venerable Nameless would appear. He would definitely use all means to deal with him. You can expose your tracks and let Star Spill know. In this way, she will definitely not go to Jinlong World again. You also don't have to worry about your loved ones, she suddenly said. However, in this way, you will be targeted by Star Spill. That is equivalent to drawing a fatal calamity to yourself. Lin Sun was stunned, and his eyes gradually brightened. She said, "If I only face Star Spill, I am confident of winning. However, if a new Supreme Venerable Nameless appears, it will be troublesome. You should know that once the new Supreme Venerable Nameless appears, he will definitely not let you off." Lin Sun took a deep breath. A hint of determination flashed in his eyes. "Senior, don't worry. Let's do it." Chapter 2147. It's been 7 days, yet you haven't found a single clue. Don't you think that's very embarrassing? Yin Xing's eyes were indifferent as he stood at the peak of a lone mountain, and his purple hair fluttered in the wind. The gray-robed, middle-aged man was terrified to the point of kneeling on the ground, and his face was ghastly pale. During these 7 days of time, he'd exhausted all means to investigate. However, never had he imagined that those cultivators of the divine secret Tao sect would simply seem as if they'd evaporated into thin air. They'd vanished without a trace, and they didn't even leave behind a trace. "Senior, give me a little more time. I'll definitely find those disciples of the divine mystery Taoist sect." The gray-robed, middle-aged man gritted his teeth. Yin Xing glanced at him and said, "Do you think the divine mystery Taoist sect has noticed something, and that's why they chose to hide in advance?" The gray-robed, middle-aged man said without the slightest hesitation, "It must be so. Otherwise, how could such a large sect that has existed for countless years vanish without a trace overnight?" Yin Xing said, "Then tell me, besides the divine mystery Taoist sect, which other power in the primordial world knows the way to the true dragon world?" The gray-robed, middle-aged man shook his head. Since ancient times, the divine mystery Taoist sect has been like the gatekeeper of the true dragon world. No matter which great power wants to contact the true dragon world, they can only go through the divine mystery Taoist sect. Right at this moment, space fluctuated, and then the figure of the man in luxurious clothes appeared. "Senior, Lin Sun has appeared," he reported excitedly. "Just last night, Lin Sun appeared in the underground world of Black River City and inquired of the hidden mist Taoist sect about heading to the dark world." Lin Sun. A wisp of light flashed through Yin Xing's eyes like lightning. "Is he heading to the dark world?" "It should be so," the man in luxurious clothes said without hesitation. "It should be." Yin Xing glanced at him. The man in luxurious clothes trembled in his heart and waved his sleeve, causing a figure to roll to the ground. "Senior, this is the person in charge of the hidden mist Taoist sect in Black River City." He saw Lin Sun appear with his own eyes. "If you don't believe me, you can ask him." The figure on the ground was a dignified, middle-aged man in embroidered clothes and a marten fur coat. But at this moment, he was scared out of his wits and panicked. "Look at me." Yin Xing looked down, a strange purple light flashing in his eyes. When the brocade-robed, middle-aged man's eyes met his, he immediately felt a tearing pain in his soul, as if a large hand had ruthlessly stabbed into his soul and was constantly twisting it. At the same time, Yin Xing saw various scenes in the Black River City. Lin Sun entered the underground world. Under the guidance of a waiter, he met the person in charge and was then led into a quiet room. After a long while, Yin Xing raised his head, and the strange purple light in his eyes had disappeared. She said thoughtfully, "Could it be that this guy has also sensed some danger and is planning to hide in the dark world?" On the ground, the middle-aged man in luxurious clothes was completely drenched in cold sweat, while blood ceaselessly flowed from his lips. He gasped rapidly for breath as he said, Do I still have a chance to survive?" The gray-robed middle-aged man and the finely dressed man both looked at Yin Xing. "I am fair in my rewards and punishments. Although you were captured, you did me a favor. I will give you a chance to live." Yin Xing waved his hand, and the middle-aged man was taken away by a terrifying force and disappeared. "There is not much time left. Since you can't find a way to the real dragon realm, you will go to the dark world with me." Yin Xing made a decision. Yin Xing firmly remembered Lin Sun's appearance, breath, and charm from the memory extracted from the middle-aged man in luxurious clothes. A realm ship took off from the Hongmeng Great World. After moving in the fixed starry lane for half a month, it gradually left the original route and sailed into the depths of the chaotic starry sky. The stars were like disorderly and desolate weeds that stretched throughout the void of the universe, and some terrifying natural disasters could be seen occurring repeatedly throughout the universe. There were void faults across, like a bloody mouth that swallowed the starry sky. There were beautiful and colorful streamers, like thin gauze fluttering in the air, but they could easily erode the stars. There were space-time storms roaring, emitting a violent power that was enough to make the Emperor realm tremble. It swept through the void and made endless roaring sounds. Those terrifying scenes were simply capable of causing the hearts of any cultivator to palpitate with fear. But this realm ship shuttled skillfully. Every time it encountered some terrible disasters, it could always avoid them. Obviously, although the starry sky was chaotic and dangerous, the realm ship was driven by a veteran. This realm ship was extremely large, like a floating land belonging to the hidden mist sect. Their goal this time was to go to the dark world. The realm ship was divided into 3 areas. In the uppermost area, there were quiet courtyards full of spiritual chi scattered like stars in the sky. Only the most distinguished guests could stay there. In front of one of the courtyards, a servant respectfully knocked on the door 3 times, stepped back a little, and bowed. "Senior, the realm ship has sailed into the most dangerous and turbulent dark night starfield. There may be some bumps and dangers along the way. I'm here to inform you. Don't worry about it." The messenger was a middle-aged man with gray hair and a gray beard. His breath was strong, and he was a Saint King realm master. But at this time, he looked very respectful. "Thank you for reminding me. I know." A voice as calm as water rang out in the courtyard. The middle-aged man hurriedly said, "Senior, don't be so polite. This is what I should do." Soon, the middle-aged man said goodbye and left. The courtyard was covered in luxuriant plants and ancient trees. Within an elegant room, a tall and extraordinary figure sat casually. He wore moon-white clothes, had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and revealed a handsome appearance. It was Lin's son. Half a month ago, he went to a place called the Black River City and found the hidden mist sect in the underground world to inquire about the news related to the dark world. Then he took the realm ship of the hidden mist sect to the dark world. With Yin Xing's ability, I'm afraid she has already known that I'm going to the dark world. But I don't know if she has caught up with me. In the room, Lin's son showed a thoughtful expression. There had been a saying on the ancient path of starry sky that if the whole world was an enemy, there was no way to retreat. The dark world was the last way to survive. However, this time, Lin's son was not forced to flee. He took the initiative to come here. On the one hand, he wanted to attract the attention of Yin Xing, the woman in purple, and make her change her action to the realm of True Dragon. On the other hand, Lin's son did have something to do. When the golden cicada youth left, he gave him a letter with a sentence on it. In the dark world, someone is waiting for you to untie the bell. With the identity of the golden cicada youth, there must be a deep meaning for him to leave such a sentence before going to the other side of the starry sky. Lin's son, who had given up going to the realm of True Dragon, naturally thought of going to the dark world to see who on earth needed him. The one who started the bell to untie the bell. Now he was targeted by Yin Xing, the woman in purple. With she, Lin's son was not afraid of anything. But Lin's son had to consider one thing. When a new nameless emperor appeared and wanted to deal with him by all means, how could he resist? It was impossible to rely on she alone. However, when Rosa left, she said that the second successor of the Fengsuan Mountain, who had never appeared and seemed extremely mysterious, was very likely to live in seclusion in the dark world. This was why Lin's son chose to go to the dark world. While thinking, Lin's son turned over his palm, and a small green crystal tree emerged. The texture of the trunk was like the natural trace of the great Tao, full of mysterious aura. The tender green and round leaves flowed down wisps of dreamy green clouds. This was the seedling of the Bodhi tree. Fortunately, although the Buzhou Mountain is not here, there is this seedling of the Bodhi tree. If the forbidden power of order appears, it can come in handy. At least it should not be difficult to hide my aura. Lin's son looked at the seedling of the Bodhi tree. With his current foundation, he was far from being able to compete with the forbidden power of order, let alone the new nameless emperor who was about to arrive. But with the seedling of the Bodhi tree, he could avoid the detection of the forbidden order that covered the sky. Crack! Crack! There was a cracking sound on the table in front of Lin's son. The originally mystical and sharp emperor sword seemed to have lost all of its spirituality at that moment. It cracked inch by inch and turned into pieces. Next to it, an obscure rain of light flowed on the broken blade, reflecting a mysterious and unfathomable pattern of Tao. Next to the broken blade, the insignificant spiritual bow made of white bones also glowed with a magnificent brilliance, illuminating the whole room. I swallowed another emperor weapon. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched imperceptibly. The spirit of the weapon, Wu Kei, was silent in the insignificant spiritual bow. He needed to refine the essence of many treasures to repair the injuries he had suffered in those countless years. Similarly, when the broken blade condensed 100 natal Tao patterns, Lin Sun noticed that there was an extremely terrifying existence dormant in the depths of the broken blade. That figure sat silently within the darkness. His hair was disheveled while numerous thick chains were coiled around his throat, legs, and waist, and they were suffused with obscure energy of order. When he opened his eyes in the darkness, it was like a light that could tear apart the night of eternity. It was extremely dazzling and sharp. The feeling that this figure gave off was like that of a god that sat in the darkness. With a single thought, he could destroy the heavens and earth. It was so terrifying that it was unimaginable. At that time, Lin Sun's cultivation was at the peak of the great saint realm, but the figure said, "If you want to completely refine my power with your current strength, you're still far from it. Come again in the future." It was this sentence that made Lin Sun completely conclude that this figure was very likely to be the spirit of the broken blade. It was because of a scene of Wu Kei refining the essence of treasures to repair his vitality that Lin Sun had an idea. He also tried to use this method to improve the power of the broken blade. Who would have thought that it would actually come true? During this period of time, the broken blade, like the insignificant spiritual bow, constantly swallowed and absorbed the essence of emperor weapons. Its quality and power had obviously improved significantly. Chapter 2148. In the past, when Lin Sun was not rich, he could only take some ordinary holy treasures and let Wu Kei refine and absorb them. During those years, most of the spoils of war from every battle had been transformed into pills that could restore Wu Kei's vitality. But since the ancient immortal forbidden area, Lin Sun began to use emperor weapons as elixirs for Wu Kei as he obtained many emperor weapons. It could be said that he was rich and overbearing. If some Emperor Realm cultivators knew about this, they would scold him for wasting God's resources. After discovering that the broken blade spirit couldn't resist the temptation of emperor weapons, the number of emperor weapons Lin Sun had began to decrease sharply. No matter how rich he was, he couldn't hold on for too long with Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit, the two gluttons with fierce appetites. Now, Lin Sun had less than 20 emperor weapons that could be used as elixirs, except for the Tower of Endless, the 3,000 floating and sinking, the immeasurable saber, and the infinite bottle. Of course, 20 sovereign weapons was still an extremely shocking number, but Lin Sun began to worry about it. Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit could devour the essence of an emperor weapon every 3 days or so. At this rate of consumption, these 20 emperor weapons would be completely consumed in less than 3 months. Without new emperor weapons, how could they satisfy the appetite of Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit? Lin Sun also had some heavenly and earthly treasures, but Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit didn't care about them at all. It was like a person who was used to eating delicacies from land to sea, fish, and meat would no longer be interested in plain food. What made Lin Sun most speechless was that neither Wu Kei nor the broken blade spirit had changed at all after devouring so many emperor weapons. It was like throwing meat buns at a dog, but there was no return. However, according to Shi, the insignificant bow and the broken blade were extraordinary and were very likely to be the top treasures among the spiritual emperor weapons. Ordinary emperor weapons couldn't be compared with them at all. The essence of emperor weapons that Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit had devoured was a kind of accumulation. When it reached a certain level, there would be a qualitative transformation. Of course, she also said that before the insignificant spiritual bow and the broken blade were completely restored, it was difficult to accurately determine the grade of their sovereign weapons. But he was sure that a monarch weapon with an artifact spirit was at least a spirit grade. It was also at this time that Lin Sun clearly understood the classification of imperial weapons. According to the difference in power, the sovereign weapons were divided into 3 grades and 9 ranks. The 3 grades were profound grade, spirit grade, and divine grade. Amongst them, profound grade emperor armaments implied that the treasure was profound and contained Emperor Dao laws within it. Emperor Dao treasures were formed from Emperor Dao markings, and they were divided into the upper, middle, and lower grades. With 9 Emperor Dao treasure patterns, it could be considered a low-grade, profound, great emperor artifact. This kind of monarch armament was one of the most commonly seen in the world. Most of the monarch weapons that Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit had devoured were at this level. With 49 inner Emperor Dao treasure patterns, it could be considered a mid-grade, profound, great emperor artifact. Be it in terms of strength or appearance, there was a clear difference between the mid-grade, profound monarch armament and the mid-grade monarch armament. With 59 Emperor Dao treasure patterns, it could be considered a high-grade, profound, great emperor artifact. The high-grade emperor artifact was extremely precious. Most of them were controlled by the 6 Tao courts and the 10 battle clans, and each of them had a unique inheritance and origin. This was the 3rd grade of profound grade. Spirit grade emperor weapon implied that the monarch armament was psychic, which meant that it had a spirit and possessed extraordinary intelligence and wisdom. Spirit Great Emperor weapons were also divided into 3 grades: upper, middle, and lower. Every rank had its own unique wonders. The spirit of a low-grade Emperor weapon could transform into a specific form, but it had to cooperate with the Monarch armament to exert its full power in battle. Spirit Great Emperor weapons had wisdom and could be controlled to fight with the Monarch armament. Spirit Great Emperor weapons had cultivation and could be separated from the Monarch armament to fight alone. They could also cultivate. However, no matter which type of Spirit Great Imperial armament it was, all of them were extremely rare and precious. Even colossi like the 6 Great Dao courts possessed Spirit Great Imperial armaments, and they could be counted on one's fingers. In this world, the birth of a Spirit Great Emperor weapon would definitely cause a sensation in the world, and countless cultivators would talk about it. It was worth mentioning that although Natal Saint treasures could also transform into Spirit Great Emperor weapons, they were completely different from profound Great Emperor weapons. In the beginning, Lin Sun didn't know the origin of the broken blade, so he tempered it as a Natal Saint treasure. But when he discovered the existence of the broken blade spirit, he realized that this treasure was far from as simple as he had imagined. It was not comparable to a holy treasure at all. But now, he finally realized that the broken blade spirit was not only not a holy treasure, but also not an ordinary monarch armament. Divine Great Emperor weapons were divine. This kind of monarch armament was more powerful and magical than Spirit Great Emperor weapons, but it was extremely rare, like a legend. There were several divine Great Emperor weapons on the entire Starry Sky ancient path, and all of them were controlled by the 6 Tao courts. Generally speaking, such divine Great Emperor weapons would not be used unless it was a life-and-death situation. It was said that divine Great Emperor weapons, also known as Emperor's Path Extreme weapons, had the power to collapse the sky and destroy a world. Knowing this, Lin Sun suddenly found that Wu Kei, the spirit of insignificance Bao, the spirit of broken blade, and the sword spirit of leaf, he had 3 imperial weapons at least of the spiritual grade. The reason why it was at least was that Wu Kei, the broken blade spirit, and leaf all had a serious problem. That was, they had been seriously injured so that it was impossible to know their specific conditions before they recovered. In addition, he also had the Tower of Ceaseless, the 3,000 floating and sinking treasures, and many Kunlun Emperor weapons, which were not comparable to ordinary Emperor weapons. It was no exaggeration to say that the number of Emperor weapons owned by some powerful forces was not as many as that owned by Lin Sun. Putting away the sapling of the Bodhi tree, Lin Sun took out a mysterious grade lower rank Emperor weapon as an elixir for Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit to recover. Lin Sun asked, "Leaf, you really don't need my help?" Leaf was a sword spirit and also a device spirit. But unlike Wu Kei and the broken blade spirit, he was not interested in Emperor weapons. Leaf, who was quietly dormant in Lin Sun's hair, said, "My body has been destroyed for a long time, so I can't absorb the essence of Emperor weapons. If I want to recover, I can only rely on my own cultivation." Lin Sun asked with interest, "What kind of cultivation method does a device spirit practice?" It was inconceivable that a treasure could give birth to a spirit, have wisdom and life, and embark on the road of cultivation. Leaf said, "I was born of the Emperor's sword, so the Tao I seek is naturally related to Sword Tao. As for the cultivation inheritance, it was given by my master, called 8 Fierce Gods Punishment." Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "Who is your master?" Leaf shook his head. "My memory has long been incomplete. I can't remember it anymore." His voice was low, with a trace of confusion. "He is the same as me." She's voice suddenly came out. "Maybe only when I recover completely can I regain my memory of the past." After a pause, she continued, "Yezi, although your body has been destroyed, if you want to recover from your injuries, cultivation isn't the only way. As far as I know, the origin source Qi can help you." Source Qi. Lin Sun took a deep breath. This was the original power born at the beginning of the formation of chaos. It was mysterious and was regarded as a congenital divine object. In terms of rarity, It was no less than a divine-grade emperor weapon. It was just like an ethereal legend, and people only heard of it. At least on this starry ancient path, no one had heard of obtaining source chi. As expected, Leaf said, this kind of divine treasure can only be found by chance. I don't expect to find it. Although the speed of recovery is a little slow, for me, it is like walking on the road of Tao again, and it will bring me a lot of benefits. Although Leaf didn't expect to get source chi, Lin Sun still firmly remembered it. Even if there was a glimmer of hope in the future, he would help Leaf find this thing. As time went by, a month had passed since they left the Hongmeng world. The boundary ship of the hidden mist house had already sailed into the depths of the dark night star zone. Along the way, there were horrible natural disasters everywhere. Chaos, upheaval, danger filled every corner of this star field. This was the route to the dark world. According to the middle-aged man of the hidden mist house in the dark world, only the three giants, the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, the Hidden Land Realm, and the Bronze Sparrow Tower had mastered the ancient transmission formation that could be used to teleport between the stars. If others wanted to enter and exit the dark world, they could only take great risks and travel through this dangerous star zone called the Dark Night. If someone was not familiar with the way, even if he had the cultivation of the Emperor Realm, he was very likely to get lost or suffer in this dangerous star zone. Knock, knock, knock. On this day, Lin Sun was meditating and refining his five viscera. Suddenly, there was a violent and hurried knock on the door, which seemed very rude. Lin Sun couldn't help frowning. This time, he took the ship as a distinguished guest. The courtyard he stayed in was located on the top floor of the boundary ship. Without permission, ordinary passengers couldn't get close at all. Knock, knock, knock. Lin Sun didn't intend to pay attention to it, but the knocking on the door was as dense as drum beats, and he couldn't wait to smash the door of the courtyard. Logically speaking, the strongmen of the hidden mist house should be alarmed at this time and stop them, but this situation didn't happen. After thinking about it, Lin Sun stood up for meditation and went straight out. Without going out of the courtyard, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness had already sensed the scene outside the courtyard. A thin man in a fiery red crane cloak, surrounded by a group of retainers, stood outside the gate of the courtyard. The one who knocked on the door was one of the retainers, full of impatience. The middle-aged man of the hidden mist house, who was responsible for serving Lin Sun, was standing beside him at the moment. He was as silent as a cicada in winter, frowning and restless. When seeing such a scene, Lin Sun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Obviously, the thin man in the fiery red crane cloak had an extraordinary background. Even the middle-aged man had to bow his head under his oppression. But why did they come to him? Chapter 2149. Lin Sun opened the gate of the courtyard. Are you fucking deaf? How dare you keep our young master waiting for so long? The retainer who was knocking on the door raised his hand and slapped towards Lin Sun's face in the air. Just because of a disagreement, he directly attacked. This retainer was obviously used to running amok. Otherwise, he would never dare to act so arrogantly. Lin Sun rarely encountered such things in recent years, so he couldn't help feeling a little surprised. However, he didn't slow down. The retainer's palm was directly grasped by Lin Sun and couldn't move an inch. To everyone's surprise, the retainer was not surprised but angry. He said, "You dog, how dare you block me? Are you tired of living?" As he said, he kicked Lin Sun. It was very aggressive, as if only he could attack, and the other party could only take a passive position to be beaten. Even a subordinate dared to be so insolent, so one could imagine that he definitely had a lot of confidence. Otherwise, this kind of character would have been killed countless times already. Crack! As soon as the retainer kicked, his wrist was twisted by Lin Sun. He screamed in pain, staggered, and was directly pressed to kneel on the ground by Lin Sun. This series of actions was done in one go. Lin Sun didn't make a sound. He looked indifferent, but his black eyes were full of coldness. He came to the door for no reason. When he knocked on the door, he was so rude and unreasonable. When he just opened the door, he was so insolent and arrogant. If he hadn't figured out the reason, Lin Sun would have killed such a reckless thing. How dare you? How dare you touch the people of Star, Evil Mountain? You really don't know what's good for you. A group of retainers around the man in a fiery red crane cloak scolded and glared at Lin Sun with a look of disbelief. The middle-aged man from the mist-hidden house was also stunned. He quickly transmitted his voice to Lin Sun. "Senior, please calm down and be patient. These are all people of Star Evil Mountain." According to the explanation of the middle-aged man, Star Evil Mountain was a huge force in the Dark World. Its influence was second only to the three Dark Giants. The man in a fiery red crane cloak was Shurlaji, the legitimate son of a supreme elder of Star Evil Mountain. He had an extremely distinguished status. In a turbulent and dangerous place like the Dark World, there was no lack of vicious people, but very few people were willing to offend Shurlaji. The reason was that his father was an extremely protective and hot-tempered fiend who was also known as the Dark-Devouring Fiend Emperor. Moreover, the forces of the Star Fiend Mountain were also extremely powerful. Especially in recent years, they faintly showed signs of catching up to the three Dark Giants. Interesting. Shurlaji, who was dressed in a fiery red crane cloak, laughed. The retainer who was forced to kneel on the ground crawled over and cried out in grief and indignation. "Young master, you have to help this lowly one. Aren't you ashamed?" Shurlaji's palm slapped down. Bang! The head of the lackey exploded, and blood splattered all over the place. A few droplets of blood landed on Shurlaji's face, but he paid them no heed at all. Instead, he licked them lightly with the tip of his tongue. The expressions of the subordinates by his side changed, and they went silent like cicadas in winter. "My friend, my retainer was too rude just now. Now, he has paid the price for it." Shurlaji looked at Lin Sun and said in a feminine voice, "As the old saying goes, you should look at the owner before beating the dog. You forced my retainer to kneel in front of me. Do you also have to pay the price?" The lean middle-aged man next to him was sweating profusely. He hurriedly said, "Child Shur, ignorance is not a crime. This senior is a distinguished guest of our hidden mist house. Can you make an exception? Don't blame me for being rude if you talk too much." Shurlaji glanced at him. The lean middle-aged man immediately shut up and winked at Lin Sun frequently, as if telling him to bear it and not to be impulsive. Lin Sun turned a blind eye to him and said, "I'll give you a chance. Disappear from my sight now, or you'll bear the consequences." Shurlaji was stunned for a moment, as if he couldn't believe his ears. The retainers around him were also astonished. They couldn't believe that someone dared to speak to their young master like this. "You seem to be very confident." Shurlaji looked at Lin Sun as if he was getting to know him again. However, with his vision, he couldn't see how terrible the young man in front of him was. In addition, he had been used to running amok since he started his cultivation. Even if he met someone stronger than him, he would not dare to provoke him easily because of his identity. Therefore, Lin Sun's strong posture at the moment made Shurlaji a little uncomfortable. He couldn't help but frown and asked, "Is this the first time you came to the Dark World by boat?" This was a test. However, Lin Sun was a little impatient. God knew how many people of the Divine Sunshine sect and the Hidden Land realm had been killed by him. How could they care about a child from the Star Evil Mountain? He looked at the lean middle-aged man next to him with cold eyes and said, "If I kill them, will I implicate your hidden mist house?" His words made the lean middle-aged man's hair stand on end. He hurriedly said, "Senior, please don't be angry. Let's talk nicely. Why do we have to fight?" "Ha ha, did you hear that? This guy threatened to kill us." Shurlaji was so angry that he laughed. He thought he had been patient enough. Who would have thought that the man in front of him didn't know what was good for him? The retainers also laughed with cold eyes. It was obvious that this was the first time this guy went to the Dark World. He didn't know the weight of the Star Evil Mountain at all. "Hurry up and apologize to our young master," a man shouted, and his whole body was full of killing intent. The other retainers also shouted one after another, all showing their killing intent. Ignorance also has to pay the price. Lin Sun finally became impatient and let out a sigh. Boom! The next moment, a terrible and boundless killing intent surged out like a raging storm. In the eyes of the people, Lin Sun, who was originally ordinary, seemed to have turned into a god coming out of the purgatory of killing at this moment. Bang, bang, bang. There was a burst of noise. Those retainers didn't have time to struggle and were forced to kneel down by the terrible power emitted from Lin Sun. Their heads hit the ground one by one, and their kneecaps were broken. Screams also rang out one after another. No! Shirlaji roared, his long hair flying as he struggled with all his might. But in the blink of an eye, his body also seemed to be pressed down by a divine mountain. He lay on the ground like a dog eating shit, and the skin all over his body cracked and blood flowed out. The lean middle-aged man was stunned as if he was struck by lightning. Those retainers were all experts from the star Evil Mountain. The stronger ones had the cultivation of the Quasi-Emperor realm, and the weaker ones had the ability of the Saint King realm. But now, before they could struggle, they were suppressed. The most frightening thing was that the other party didn't even make a move. Just the power emitted from his body made them powerless to struggle and resist. It should be known that the forces in the dark world were different from the outside world. The descendants of every sect were mostly ruthless characters who had wandered into the dark world, and there was no lack of evil people who lived on the edge of knife. Especially in the Star Evil Mountain, the descendants of the sects were a mix of good and bad people. There were villains who had become bandits, evil tyrants whose hands were stained with blood, and demons who had committed heinous crimes in the outside world. There was no lack of such evil people among the retainers who followed Shirlaji. But now all of them were kneeling. Even a noble figure like Shirlaji was no exception. When he looked at Lin Sun again, the lean middle-aged man's eyes were filled with deep awe. "Tell me, why did you come to me?" Lin Sun looked down at Shirlaji on the ground with deep eyes. "Kill me if you dare." Shirlaji was full of anger, and his eyes almost popped out. For the first time in his life, he was defeated so badly and tasted the humiliation of kneeling on the ground for the first time. "Who says it?" Lin Sun moved his eyes and looked at those retainers. These retainers looked at each other, and no one answered. Lin Sun flicked his finger. Bang! A bloody hole was pierced through the space between the eyebrows of one of the retainers, and he silently died on the spot. "You say it." Lin Sun looked at one of them. The retainer trembled all over and said in a trembling voice, "Young lord, he heard that you took the purple jade token of Miss Qing to take this ship. He suspected that there was something fishy between you and Miss Qing, so he planned to come to ask." Lin Sun frowned. Qing was the woman in a cyan dress with a blood umbrella in her hand, exuding a mysterious and enchanting aura. In the underground world of Lin and City, Lin Sun was amazed by the unique elegance of this woman. In order to compensate Lin Sun, this woman once gave him a purple token. This time, Lin Sun took the boundary ship of the Misty House and lived in the courtyard on the top floor. It was indeed because of the purple token in his hand that Lin Sun received such special care. He turned over his palm, and the purple token appeared. Just because of this, it's not about the token. The retainer hesitated for a moment. Ignoring Shirlaji's murderous eyes, he braced himself and said, "All the people in the dark world know that our young lord is infatuated with Miss Qing and regards her as his own." Only then did Lin Sun realize that it was because of the token he obtained that Shirlaji suspected that he had a close relationship with Qing. That was why Shirlaji came here aggressively to find out the truth. You can't catch up with her, so you stop others from contacting her. You are really overbearing. Lin Sun sneered. Shirlaji, who was kneeling on the ground, looked uncertain. He gritted his teeth and said, "Then tell me, what's the relationship between you and Qing? It doesn't matter." Lin Sun answered casually. But Shirlaji didn't believe it and said angrily, "If it doesn't matter, will she give you her purple jade token? That's the treasure she has been carrying since she was a child. In all the years I've been pursuing her, she's never shown it to me. But now, this token has fallen into your hands. How can you say that it has nothing to do with her? Do you really think I'm an idiot?" There was unconcealable resentment in his voice. Lin Sun looked strange, and his eyes were strange. After all, this guy really came to make trouble for him because of inexplicable jealousy. He couldn't help saying, "Your name is very good." Shirlaji was stunned. "What do you mean?" Lin Sun replied seriously, "I think you really lost your mind." Chapter 2150. He lost his mind. The middle-aged man almost laughed out loud. Shirlaji was furious and felt that he had suffered a great humiliation. Lin Sun thought for a while and took out an antique bronze mirror. Do you recognize this thing? Shirlaji was struck by lightning and cried out involuntarily. She even gave you the bronze mirror to guide the way to the dark land? His voice was full of jealousy and anger. You still say you have nothing to do with Qing Ying, the bronze mirror of guidance. Lin Sun was lost in thought. When he left Lin and City, Qing Ying once took the initiative to find him and said some intriguing words. If you meet a man named Lin Sun in the future, tell him that Qing Ying of Misty House wants to meet him. At that time, I will tell him something beneficial and harmless. At that time, Lin Sun walked in the world as Yu Xian, but Qing Ying seemed to have guessed something. Later, Qing Ying gave him the bronze mirror of guidance and said that there was a map inside. With the map, Lin Sun could find her. At that time, she would give Lin Sun an irresistible reward. So you also know the Dark Land? Lin Sun asked. Shirlaji said, that's the primordial ancestral land of Misty House. Everyone in the dark world knows it. But without the bronze mirror of guidance, no one can find the Dark Land. Lin Sun said, so the Dark Land is in the dark world? Shirlaji said, isn't it nonsense? He felt that Lin Sun had lost his mind at this moment. Only then did Lin realize that Qing Ying definitely had a special intention when he gave him the bronze mirror for guiding the way. What kind of beneficial and harmless thing did she want to tell him? Senior, now that the misunderstanding has been cleared up, could you spare Child Shir and others for the sake of Misty House? The middle-aged man stepped forward and smiled apologetically. Shirlaji and others also looked at Lin Sun. At this time, no matter how stupid they were, they realized that they had kicked a big iron plate. Lin Sun said casually, it's easy to live. Give me an emperor treasure, and I will let you go. An emperor treasure? Shirlaji and the others were dumbfounded. This was an exorbitant demand. Even though Shirlaji was of noble status, and his father was the dark devouring demon emperor of the Starfiend Mountain, he only had a single monarch artifact with him. Haha, a mere quasi-emperor dares to lay his hands on an emperor weapon. How bold of him! Is he not afraid of bursting himself to death? A cold laugh suddenly rang out. A black-robed old man had appeared in the courtyard not far away. He had white hair, a youthful complexion, eyes that were sharp like a hawk, and his entire body emanated an imposing aura that belonged solely to an Emperor Realm figure. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, Old guy, be careful of your words. Hiss! All the spectators gasped. When has a quasi-emperor dared to reprimand and threaten a true martial emperor? This was simply a case of an old man who had eaten frost and was tired of living, especially the burly middle-aged man. He was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. He quickly transmitted his voice. Senior, this is a great emperor of the evil path from the primordial world's demon province's netherworld Taoist sect. You'd better apologize quickly and lower your head, or you'll lose your life. After that, his whole body was soaked in cold sweat. The martial emperor realm could not be insulted, and the black-robed old man was a demon emperor. His power and terror were boundless. Which quasi-emperor in the world dared to slander him? The black-robed old man was also stunned, and then his face suddenly darkened. His eyes were surging with a terrifying light. Young man, do you know how to write the word death? Lin Sun sneered. You're so old, but you still can't write. How about I teach you? Shirlaji and the others, as well as the burly middle-aged man, were all dumbfounded. There was only one thought in their mind. Crazy. This guy was absolutely crazy. Who in the world dared to offend an emperor realm in such a frenzied manner? Look how arrogant this kid is. No wonder he fled to the dark world on the boundary ship. He must have caused a terrible disaster. How dare he be so disrespectful to an emperor realm? Even if he fled to the dark world, he wouldn't survive for more than a few days. Young man, hurry up and kneel down to apologize. There was a burst of noise, some ridiculing and some disdainful. On the upper floor of the boundary ship, there were many courtyards. The noise here had already alarmed the guests in those courtyards. When they saw Lin Sun slandering an emperor realm in such a way, they were also stunned and couldn't believe it. Those noisy voices were made by these people. The black-robed old man said with a gloomy face, "Well, I'd like to ask you how to write the word death." As he said, he slapped the air with his palm. Boom! In the void, thunder roared, and the rolling black light condensed into a giant black palm, emitting a terrible fluctuation of Emperor Realm law, which caused the void to collapse and explode. At this moment, all the experts who witnessed this scene felt suffocated and a chill ran down their spines. The power of the Emperor Realm was vividly demonstrated in this palm. Even looking at it from a distance, it made people feel desperate. It's over. The burly middle-aged man's hands and feet were cold. If this senior died, how could he explain it to Miss Qingying? Shirlaji and the others were ecstatic. How could they expect that an Emperor Realm would appear halfway, which was equivalent to helping them eliminate a great enemy? The onlookers couldn't help trembling in their hearts. This was the consequence of slandering an Emperor Realm. This was the so-called Emperor Realm couldn't be insulted. In a flash, Lin Sun stood still, but a wisp of sword chi swept out from his hair. Swish! As the sword chi slashed out, it was like a light that tore the sky, so bright and dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Immediately after that, an earth-shattering explosion resounded, and the entire realm ship shook violently. Some of the meteorites floating in the nearby starry sky exploded simultaneously at this moment, and they transformed into powder that drifted in the air. Before the rumble had died down and the smoke and dust had dispersed, an enraged cry resounded. How was it possible? The voice came from the black-robed old man. At this time, people's vision finally recovered, and they saw the black-robed old man, who was regarded as a god and couldn't be slandered, with a face full of shock and anger. On the other hand, a bloody sword wound had been torn open on his chest, causing his skin and flesh to split open while fresh blood flowed out without end. Just one sword strike injured an Emperor Realm expert. The whole place was silent. Not a sound could be heard. The middle-aged man, Shirlaji, and the onlookers were all dumbfounded, and their eyes were in a trance. Who could imagine that the arrogant quasi-emperor, the young man who despised and slandered the Emperor Realm, had such ability? It was incredible. At this time, the sword spirit Leaf stood on Lin Sun's shoulder and said casually, "It's an old man at the second level of the Emperor Realm. Do you want to keep him as a live target or kill him directly?" "Kill him." Lin Sun sighed helplessly. Even if the old man at the second level of the Emperor Realm was used as a target, he couldn't kill him now. Only then did people notice the existence of Leaf, and they felt dizzy again. The conversation was too casual. What did they think the Emperor Realm was? A prey that could be taken at will? A fish on the chopping board? But when he noticed the sword spirit Leaf, it was too late for the black-robed old man to be angry, and there was only a bone-chilling feeling left in his heart. He sensed a deadly aura of danger. Swish! Without hesitation, he teleported to the void to escape. Even if this was the most dangerous Dark Night Star Zone, and even if he was very likely to die once he got lost in it, he couldn't care less. As a great emperor of the diabolism, he had experienced countless dangers and slaughters to achieve his current cultivation. He was very sure that if he didn't escape now, he was doomed to die. "Old man, you still don't know how to write the word death? Why are you running? Come here, I'll teach you." Leaf smiled, and when his voice sounded, he had already turned into a stream of light and chased after the old man. In the blink of an eye, Leaf and the black-robed old man both disappeared in the vast starry sky. It was only at this moment that the shocked crowd suddenly realized that the great emperor of the diabolism from the Netherworld sect had fled without a fight. The middle-aged man was in a trance. The impact of the scene was so great that he couldn't calm down for a while. Shirlaji and the others were scared out of their wits. Who could believe that a dignified Emperor Realm cultivator was scared away? Those onlookers were like frosted eggplants at this moment. They closed their mouths tightly, and their expressions changed constantly. Before, they had ridiculed Lin Sun, thinking that he was arrogant and ignorant. But what happened now was like a slap in the face, making them feel uncomfortable. In just a moment, a shrill scream rang out in the distance of the starry sky, and then it stopped abruptly. Then, Leaf turned into a stream of light and returned. He raised his hand, and a storage belt fell into Lin Sun's hand. This old guy looks majestic, but his family is quite shabby. He only has 2 low-grade mysterious Emperor weapons. Leaf was a little disappointed. Only then did people recognize that the storage belt was originally wrapped around the black-robed old man, but now it had become a trophy. Obviously, the scream just now meant that the great emperor of the Diabolism from the Netherworld sect had died before he could reach the Dark World. And his death could be said to be disaster comes from a mouth. The scene became more and more silent, and it was oppressive to the point of suffocation. Killing an Emperor Realm expert was as easy as taking something out of one's pocket. This made Lin Sun and Yi full of fatal danger in their eyes. Lin Sun put away the storage belt and looked at Shi Leji, who was kneeling on the ground. This time, before Lin Sun spoke, Shi Leji, who had already turned pale with fright, took out a crystal-clear red jade axe. This was also the only Emperor weapon he had. Fellow Taoist, I beg you to spare us just this once. Shi Leji begged with a sad face. Lin Sun looked at the red jade axe and was surprised to find that it was a high-grade, mysterious Emperor weapon, containing a total of 66 Emperor treasure tattoos. This was very precious. It was only 1 grade away from giving birth to a weapon spirit. Putting away the martial scarlet axe, Lin Sun paid no attention to Shi Leji and the others who were kneeling on the ground in fear. Instead, he looked around and said calmly, I'm afraid before, many people have spoken rudely to me. Should they pay for it? Here comes the update. Thank you, Qi Bansheng, for your reward. Goldfish, only then did I realize that the monthly votes for these few days are actually double, and it will end tomorrow. Chapter 2151. Those onlookers who could live on the top floor of the Boundary ship were naturally regarded as distinguished guests by the Misty House. None of them was simple, but after witnessing the Evil Path's Emperor's death, they were so shocked that their scalps went numb and their hearts were filled with horror. Therefore, when Lin Sun proposed to let those who had ridiculed him pay the price, they obediently took out some compensation even though they were extremely uncomfortable. Elixirs, magic materials, rare treasures, everything was available. Lin Sun didn't care about it anymore. He glanced at Shi Leji and others who were kneeling on the ground and said, Don't let me see you again. He turned around and walked into the courtyard. Shi Leji and the others heaved a long sigh of relief before scrambling out of the area. Third senior sister just said that when I arrived in the Dark World, I didn't have to take the initiative to look for him, and second senior brother would be able to detect my presence. I just don't know if second senior brother will meet me if he really detects my trace. Back to the courtyard, Lin Sun couldn't help frowning when he thought of the purpose of coming to the Dark World. Besides, the words left by the young man with golden cicada only told him to solve the problem, and there were no other clues. Lin Sun didn't know where to start. Maybe I can go to the hidden place and meet the mysterious girl, Qingying? Lin Sun thought. The power of the Misty House couldn't be underestimated. In every city in the primordial world, there was an underground black market, and the controller of these black markets was the Misty House. Before, Lin Sun had never thought that the primordial place of the Misty House, a force all over the primordial world, should be in the Dark World. Just as Lin Sun was thinking, Xi's voice suddenly sounded. A new nameless supreme venerable has appeared. This sentence, like a thunder, made Lin Sun stiff all over. Finally did he come? On this day, the taboo order power that seemed to have no master suddenly underwent a shocking change throughout the starry skies, ancient path heavens. It was as if a new master had appeared in a cage that no one was watching over. It appeared. From today on, do we have to live in the shadow of the taboo order again? I really don't know what the world will become. Sigh. On this day, Countless great figures that possessed extraordinary cultivation sensed the change in the order of the grand Tao in the universe, and a wisp of gloominess arose in their hearts. To most living beings on the ancient path in the starry sky, today was no different from the past, and they didn't notice at all that a boundlessly terrifying existence had traversed the void and arrived from the other side of the starry sky. Black-yellow Tao Court. The heart of Taishu Hong, who was meditating, shook abruptly, and he was jolted awake. He stood up and walked out of his place of cultivation. When he raised his head and looked up, he noticed that the sky had suddenly been covered by the forbidden energy of order that was pitch black like ink. At that instant, Taishu Hong's pupils shrank. Rumble. In the pitch-black sky, there was a thunderous roar, and a forbidden aura of destruction enveloped the entire heavenly yellow Tao Court. What happened? A forbidden aura. Heavens! How could this be? At this moment, countless exclamations of surprise resounded out. All the disciples of the dark yellow Tao Court were alarmed, and they stopped what they were doing and stared dumbfoundedly at the sky. A strand of indescribable panic and terror spread along with this. Even if it was an Emperor realm figure, all of them were in a panic, and they didn't know why this forbidden energy of order would descend onto their dark yellow Tao Court. Activate the mountain guarding grand formation. Everyone, quickly retreat into the grand formation. Don't act arbitrarily without orders. Right amidst this oppressive and panicked atmosphere, Taishu Hong's dignified and powerful voice resounded, and it surged through the heavens and the earth. At the same time, Taishu Hong took a deep breath, and his figure teleported to arrive at the restricted area at the back of the mountain. This place was suffused with chaotic qi, and lightning faintly flickered within it. The ancient mottled heavenly yellow Tao tablet stood towering there, and it emanated an obscure and mysterious sheen. Taishu Hong heaved a sigh of relief in his heart when he saw the heavenly yellow Tao tablet. The heavenly yellow Tao tablet was a precious chaotic treasure that was born in an unknown place, and it possessed a miraculous and unfathomable power. It was capable of resisting and concealing the forbidden energy of order. During the countless years when the last imperial exalt, nameless, was in charge of the forbidden energy of order, the reason the heavenly yellow Tao Court was able to maintain neutrality and not obey the orders of the imperial exalt was because of the existence of this heavenly yellow Tao tablet. Sectmaster. Swish. A wave of fluctuation arose in space before two figures appeared. The figure on the left was tall, wore a Taoist robe, and his gray hair was disheveled. Shockingly, it was Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf. During the Tao discussion that day, Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf had once made an appearance to acknowledge Ra Su, who'd appeared as an heir of the Origin Convergence Tao Court. By Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf's side was a man in linen clothes with a firm and chilly expression. He was a living fossil of the heavenly yellow Tao Court, Imperial Ancestor Shuang. Just like Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf, he didn't head to the other side of the starry sky to search for the Grand Tao, and he'd chosen to stay instead. Presently, only the two of them were Imperial Ancestor realm existences that held down the fort in the heavenly yellow Tao Court. Martial uncles. Taishu Hong cupped his hands. Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf and Imperial Ancestor Shui Ying nodded with extremely heavy expressions. Obviously, they'd noticed that the situation today wasn't right. Perhaps this is an unprecedented calamity, but with the heavenly yellow Tao tablet here, it won't cause our heavenly yellow Tao Court to end. Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf said. Is that so? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded in the sky. Following that, the forbidden order energy that was like a black cloud that covered the sky violently rolled and paved a staircase that descended from the sky. A godlike figure with his hands behind his back walked out from the depths of the staircase. With every step he took, the world wailed, and everything trembled as if they were submitting to him. The expressions of Taishu Hong, Imperial Ancestor Greenleaf, and Imperial Ancestor Shui Ying changed simultaneously. This figure was incomparably majestic and emitted a supreme and boundless might. Numerous forbidden order energy lingered around his body, making him seem like the incarnation of the heavenly Tao. In the blink of an eye, this figure appeared out of thin air and appeared not far away from Taishu Hong and the others. Even if the distance was extremely close, with the cultivation of Taishu Hong and the others, they actually couldn't see the appearance of this figure clearly. He was too dazzling, like a great sun shining alone, with an aura of supremacy in the heavens and earth. Just looking at his figure made one feel suffocated, as if they'd seen a god. Without a doubt, this figure was the newly arrived Emperor Nameless. Taishu Hong and the others all looked extremely solemn, as if they were facing a great enemy. The figure with his hands behind his back glanced at the black-yellow Dao tablet not far away, then looked at Taishu Hong and the others. He said indifferently, "I've come this time to regain control of the forbidden order in the heavens, and I've come to take revenge." His voice was faint and indistinct, revealing a sense of superiority and overlooking all living beings. Taking a deep breath, Taishu Hong said, "My black-yellow Dao court has always maintained neutrality since ancient times. It has been so in the past, and it will be so in the future. I just don't know why fellow Taoist has come here." "You call me fellow Taoist?" The figure's voice didn't conceal the disdain in his heart. "Remember, in this starry ancient path, I am the supreme ruler. You can call me Emperor Shi Tian. On the other side of the starry sky, the great Tao is like the heavens, and I'm the emperor, so I'm called Emperor Shi Tian." The expressions of Taishu Hong and the others changed constantly. The Emperor Nameless, who called himself Emperor Shi Tian, had shown a kind of superior attitude since he appeared, which made them feel extremely uncomfortable. "I've come here for only one thing." Emperor Shi Tian's voice was indifferent. "From today onwards, everyone in the black-yellow Dao court must obey my orders. If anyone disobeys, then there's no need for the black-yellow Dao court to exist anymore." His voice was very direct. This wasn't a discussion, but an order. Taishu Hong was furious, and his face was livid. He was just about to say something when he was stopped by Emperor Ancestor Greenleaf. "Emperor Shi Tian, my black-yellow Dao court has never fought against the Forbidden Order and has never been involved in the disputes of the world. Why do you want to force us?" Emperor Ancestor Greenleaf's voice was deep. Emperor Shi Tian thought for a moment and said, "Seeing that you still have some use, I'll tell you that in the future on this starry ancient path, no matter who it is, no matter what force it is, they must submit to me. In short, those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will die." Buzz. The black-yellow Dao tablet emitted a strange fluctuation as it suddenly rose from the ground and fell into the palm of Emperor Ancestor Greenleaf. Emperor Ancestor Greenleaf exuded a terrifying aura, and his eyes were like lightning as he said coldly, "We just want to remain neutral, but you're forcing us. Do you really think that this starry ancient path can only be enslaved by you alone?" Emperor Shi Tian stared at the black-yellow Dao tablet for a moment, and then said, "This treasure may save your life, but it can't save the entire black-yellow Dao court. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try." Emperor Ancestor Greenleaf's forehead was bursting with blue veins, and his heart seemed to be extremely conflicted and struggling. But in the end, he sighed dejectedly and said, "Sect Master, you make the decision." It was related to the life and death of the black-yellow Dao court, and he dared not gamble. Taishu Hong was silent for a long time. In the end, he lowered his head bitterly. On this day, the black-yellow Dao court, which had remained neutral since ancient times, submitted to the new nameless emperor, Emperor Shi Tian. As soon as the news came out, the world was shocked, and it set off a great earthquake. It was unknown how many great forces were disappointed. It should be known that since the end of the game of chess, among the 6 great courts, the black-yellow Dao court, which had not suffered any damage, had long been recognized as the #1 court in all heavens. But on the first day of the arrival of the new nameless emperor, the neutral attitude of the black-yellow Dao court, which had been maintained for countless years, was broken. How could people not be shocked? Emperor Shi Tian's arrival was aimed at the black-yellow Dao court, which was clearly to establish his power, to announce to all heavens that there would be only one position on this starry ancient path in the future. That was his heavenly Emperor Shi's attitude. When she heard the news, Ling Hongzhuang's heart was filled with indescribable disappointment. Not long ago, when Lin Sun was chased by all the great forces, she had tried to persuade Taishu Hong to let the black-yellow Dao court protect Lin Sun. But Taishu Hong refused, just because the black-yellow Dao court had always maintained a neutral attitude. Is the position that has been maintained for countless years necessarily right? In the end, isn't it still oppressed to have no choice but to bow down and surrender? At this moment, Ling Hongzhuang's heart was also full of disappointment. Neutral, in the face of absolute power, it had become an ironic attitude. Thanks to Novanda, W83127W, WJH6999, and other children's shoes for their gifts and support. Today is the last day of the double monthly votes. Goldfish, I have decided to continue to add chapters tonight. In addition, warm up a little. At the end of this month, the last 3 days will be continuous outbursts. At that time, if the outbursts are less than 4 times a day, it will be considered my loss. It is more likely to be 5 times a day. Chapter 2152. The submission of the black-yellow Taoist court made the title of Emperor Shi Tiandi spread at a terrifying speed and was known by countless cultivators. The previous Emperor Nameless, who was in charge of the taboo order, was extremely mysterious and didn't even have a title. He had presided over the starry ancient road for countless years and rarely appeared in public. Only some old antiques and some huge forces knew of his existence. But this time, Emperor Shi Tiandi was completely different. He was not afraid at all. He was overbearing and direct. On the first day of his arrival on the starry ancient road, he showed his absolute strength and means, shocking the heavens. Similarly, the submission of the black-yellow Taoist court also changed the situation of the world. Many great forces were in a panic and their hearts were heavy. Many people even complained about the battle emperor of Fonsu Mountain. The reason was that although the previous Emperor Nameless had been defeated, the root of the taboo order, the power of the taboo order, had not been eradicated. Now the arrival of Emperor Shi Tiandi made the starry ancient road fall into an unprecedented atmosphere. With such a comparison, many people subconsciously thought that if the previous Emperor Nameless was still here, how could there be such a big change? But no matter what, everyone realized that with the arrival of Emperor Shi Tiandi, the situation of the world had changed dramatically sure enough. On the second day after the black-yellow Taoist court bowed its head, the Heaven and Earth Taoist court in the Hongmeng world took the initiative to announce that they would submit to Emperor Shi Tiandi. Following that, the Dao courts such as Panwu, Chaos, and Multitude Demon also expressed their attitude to assist Emperor Shi Tiandi to maintain the order of the heavens in the starry sky. Then, the Heavenly Ghost, Taowu, Blood Kirin, Qiyang, Xiongqi, Blackwater, and many other ancient emperor clans also expressed their willingness to submit to Emperor Shi Tiandi. For a time, the entire Hongmeng world and even the entire starry ancient road were in a great commotion because of this heavy news. Emperor Shi Tiandi. This title seemed to have become the most supreme existence in the hearts of countless cultivators, and it was like a god that reigned supreme over the universe. Since the primeval times until now, when has something like this ever happened? They're all first-class orthodoxies in the world, but they're actually willing to be slaves to Emperor Shi Tiandi. Countless voices of grief and indignation sounded. The taboo order is like a shackle that blocks our path to the Tao. It should be our common enemy, but now, even those Tao courts have bowed their heads. In the future, who among us can escape the fate of being enslaved? How I wish the War Emperor would come back. In this world, I'm afraid only the descendants of Mount Fongsun would dare to go against the Heavenly Emperor Shi, right? This is destined to be a time filled with humiliation. Unfortunately, we were born here, and we are destined to not be able to escape. Countless sighs, sorrowful, disappointed, and angry voices resounded throughout the starry sky. However, everyone knew that as long as Tiandi was alive, the haze that shrouded the starry sky ancient path would never be dispelled. At the same time, the news of Heavenly Emperor Tiandi descending upon the ancient path of the starry sky had also spread to the dark world. For a time, it caused an unknown amount of turmoil and disturbance. On the third day after Tiandi regained control of the forbidden power of order, he issued his first order. Order the whole world to arrest Lin Sun, the successor of Mind Mountain. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. If anyone dares to protect him, I'll annihilate their entire clan. The order was simple and direct, but it was filled with killing intent. The world was shaken. Everyone realized that this was revenge against minuscule mountain. Lin Sun is doomed. When they learned of this order, everyone's reaction was surprisingly consistent. In this world controlled by the Heavenly Emperor, no matter where Lin Sun escaped to, he would have no way to survive. He was bound to be the enemy of the whole world. However, when the whole world was in an uproar, Tiandi seemed to have vanished without a trace, and no one knew where he had gone. In the Dark Night Star area, on the boundary ship, in the courtyard, in the room, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation. The amazing thing was that beside him, there was another Lin Sun in cyan, who looked exactly like him, also meditating. Before long, Lin Sun in cyan opened his eyes. His pupils reflected the strange phenomenon of all things withering and flourishing, and the cycle of life and death, which looked extremely terrifying. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun also opened his eyes. Their eyes met in the air, and suddenly a wonderful feeling emerged in their hearts. This feeling was exactly the same, without any difference. Interesting. Lin Sun and Lin Sun in cyan smiled at the same time, and even their smiles were exactly the same. This Lin Sun in cyan was the Greenwood Taoist body. Different from the past, the Greenwood Taoist body already had consciousness and cultivation, and could cultivate and fight alone. Of course, the consciousness of the Greenwood Taoist body was the consciousness of Lin Sun. Even if it was controlled independently by the Greenwood Taoist body, as long as Lin Sun thought about it, the consciousness of the doppelganger would be completely controlled by the Greenwood Taoist body. It was like a branch growing on a big tree, but this branch was still connected to the trunk. From today on, you will major in the Dharma scripture, the Green Lotus World method, and the sky patching technique. Lin Sun thought about it, condensed a variety of inherited powers in his body, and passed them to the Greenwood Taoist body through his consciousness. At the same time, Lin Sun handed the Great Way plate to the Greenwood Taoist body. This was a marvelous Kunlun Emperor weapon. Through the deduction power of this treasure, the Greenwood Taoist body could comprehend the Taoist scriptures and refine his cultivation with twice the result with half the effort. After doing all this, the Greenwood Taoist body turned into a green cloud and returned to the liver palace in Lin Sun's body. He began to cultivate cross-legged. Lin Sun showed a satisfied smile. This was the magical effect of the five virtues realm of the Great Way Golden Court scripture. Using one's own soul and Tao as the foundation, one could refine a doppelganger with real consciousness and cultivation. Although it was an independent existence from the original body, everything the doppelganger possessed would be controlled by the original body, whether it was practicing or comprehending the Great Way. Everything is difficult at the beginning. Now, I have condensed the consciousness and cultivation of the Greenwood Taoist body, which means I have entered the threshold of the merciless realm. Next, I won't have to work so hard to condense other doppelgangers. Lin Sun calculated that it took him almost 3 months to condense the consciousness and cultivation of the Greenwood Taoist body. However, with the help of the Greenwood Taoist body to comprehend the Great Way, he could save nearly half of the time when condensing the consciousness and cultivation of the next doppelganger of the Great Way. With the combat power of my original body, I can already fight against 50% of the power of the injured Sword Emperor of Chaos. With the help of the Greenwood Taoist body, I will definitely be stronger. Lin Sun thought. During that period of time, she would often appear and spar with him. Although he was still abused, Lin Sun's combat power was improving significantly, and even his cultivation was improving step by step. Now, he was only one step away from the consummation of the second level of the Quasi-Emperor realm. A few days ago, Lin Sun had a practice with the Sword Emperor of Chaos, who was suppressed in the Tower of Endless Way, and clearly felt the change of his strength. It was no exaggeration to say that the current Quasi-Emperor realm, even the peak Quasi-Emperor realm, was no longer Lin Sun's concern. His eyes had long been set on fighting against the Emperor realm. Moreover, Lin Sun had a strong premonition. When he condensed more doppelgangers with consciousness, his cultivation speed would usher in a comprehensive explosion and improvement. A person's energy was limited. He had to temper his cultivation, comprehend the Great Way, study Taoist scriptures, and comprehend the Great Way. In addition, he also had to deal with and solve various problems on the road to cultivation. It was obvious how much effort and time was needed to take care of all of this. This was also an important reason why experts with higher cultivations needed to spend hundreds or even thousands of years every time they broke through to the next realm. However, if a person's cultivation was shared by 5 doppelgangers that were exactly the same as him, how could the cultivation speed be slow? While thinking, Lin Sun suddenly thought of Shi. A few days ago, the forbidden power of order covering the heavens underwent a shocking change and was recontrolled by the nameless Supreme Emperor. From that day on, she returned to the heaven-accessing place and stayed dormant. This also freed Lin Sun from the practice of being completely abused. However, without the extreme pressure of tempering, Lin Sun felt slightly uncomfortable, as if something was missing. It seems that you've already liked the feeling of being abused. Leaf, who was quietly hiding in Lin Sun's hair, suddenly said, "If you need, I can also be your opponent." Lin Sun said angrily, "I don't like to be abused. I'm just improving my strength." Leaf said, "That Star Destroyer hasn't appeared yet, but the new nameless Supreme Emperor has appeared. Lin Sun, you have to be careful." After saying that, he added, "Danger will come at any time." Lin Sun was shocked. These days, he traveled across the chaotic and turbulent Dark Night Star area on the border ship, so he knew nothing about what was happening outside. But he knew without thinking that the new nameless Supreme Emperor would definitely not let go of him, the successor of Mount Mind Heart. Moreover, his identity was not as simple as being the successor of Mount Mind Heart. His origin and the heaven-accessing place would also cause great trouble. Lin Sun looked to one side, where the sapling of the Bodhi tree was shining, flowing with cyan light, like smoke. No matter how powerful the new nameless Supreme Emperor is, with this sapling of the Bodhi tree, he can at least avoid the detection of the forbidden power of order. Lin Sun muttered, "What I'm most worried about now is the woman named Star Destroyer." Speaking of this, he suddenly raised his head and looked out of the courtyard. At the same time, the door of the courtyard was knocked 3 times, and the voice of the middle-aged man from the hidden mist house sounded outside the courtyard. "Senior, in about a quarter of an hour, the border ship will sail into the starry vortex leading to the dark world. At that time, the border ship will encounter the impact caused by the violent vibration of time and space. I'm here to tell you not to worry about it." Lin Sun realized that after nearly 2 months, the border ship across the starry sky was about to reach the dark world. Thank you, Shuju36009917 and Ungrateful Bow Rabbit, for their monthly tickets. Chapter 2153. In the starry sky, a huge whirlpool black hole appeared. When it rotated slowly, it made the starry sky feel distorted. Around the whirlpool black hole, colorful and magnificent light of time and space fluttered, which was so beautiful that it made people tremble. Compared with the huge whirlpool black hole, the boundary ship of the hidden mist house was as small and inconspicuous as a grain of sand. When they saw the light of time and space fluttering like rain, all the practitioners on the boundary ship gasped. Time, it was one of the most supreme and terrifying power of order. Even those in the Emperor realm couldn't resist the erosion of time. This kind of law of order was even more terrible than the forbidden power of order. Since ancient times, almost no one had been able to understand the mystery of time on this starry sky, ancient road. Time is like a knife. It can kill the ancestors and all living beings. It is as terrible as the great way of destiny. Seeing this scene, Yi couldn't help murmuring. Lin Sun's expression remained unchanged, but a strange emotion arose in his heart. The innate ability of his origin spirit meridian was related to time and could stop time for an instant. With the improvement of his cultivation, Lin Sun was more and more aware of the horror of the forbidden passing, which was absolutely against the natural order. In the shocked and awe-inspiring eyes of the crowd, the boundary ship slowly sailed into the huge whirlpool black hole. At this moment, the boundary ship seemed to fall into the turbulence of time, producing violent vibrations and roars, which made all the practitioners tremble. Even though the attendants of the hidden mist house had already warned them not to worry, they were still horrified when they saw such a horrible scene. At this moment, there was a burst of heat in front of Lin Sun's chest. The spiritual vein, which had been silent for a long time, seemed to wake up, producing a strange and obscure heat flow. Whoosh! Suddenly, as if being pulled, a ray of magnificent, dreamy light of time flew over and disappeared into Lin Sun's body before anyone noticed it. Lin Sun only felt a wisp of terrible power drilling into his heart. His eyes darkened, and he almost fainted. Such a shocking change also caught him off guard, and he didn't even have time to react. Boom! The place where the heart vein was located was like a silent volcano erupting, making Lin Sun's body instantly turn red as if he was about to bleed. The boundless pain was like thousands of swords stabbing his heart, which made Lin Sun couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. Lin Sun, what's wrong with you? You noticed that something was wrong. I'm fine. Lin Sun almost gritted his teeth to squeeze out these two words. His origin spirit meridian was born on his heart meridian. At this moment, a wisp of the laws of time was colliding with it, as if it wanted to corrode and occupy his origin spirit meridian. Even with Lin Sun's current cultivation, he was helpless and didn't know how to deal with it. He could only endure it. A full quarter of an hour later, the wisp of time energy that was rampaging in his heart meridian like a wild horse was slowly devoured by the strange power emitted by the origin spirit vein and disappeared. Lin Sun's face was pale and his clothes were soaked in cold sweat. He was as wet as if he had just been fished out of the water. He panted heavily, his heart still pounding with fear. The scenes from before were simply like a struggle between life and death. It was too sudden and too terrifying. Are you sure? Leaf asked. It's really fine this time. Lin Sun exhaled a long breath of turbid air and calmed his mind. A wisp of the law of time had actually entered his origin spirit vein. Was this sudden change a blessing or a curse? The origin spirit vein was glittering like a piece of pure and flawless white jade, flowing with bright and illusory light, which looked extremely mysterious. The power of forbidden passing was contained in it. When Lin Sun carefully perceived it, he noticed the difference at the first time. On the smooth surface of the origin spirit vein, there was a trace of almost invisible texture. This texture was like the trace of the Great Way, and also like the natural bone vein. If one didn't carefully perceive it, he couldn't notice it at all. When seeing this scene, Lin Sun's heart beat fiercely at this moment, and a thought came to his mind uncontrollably. Was this the wisp of the law of time? If so, didn't it mean that he had the opportunity to touch and comprehend the mystery of time? At the thought of this, Lin Sun's eyes lit up, and he felt that the pain he had suffered before was nothing at all. It should be known that time was regarded as the supreme and untouchable power of order. Even the Emperor Realm could only look at it and sigh, unable to touch it. If those old antiques in this world knew that there was such a seemingly insignificant wisp of the law of time hidden in his body, they would fight for it crazily. However, when Lin Sun calmed down and tried to sense it, he was surprised to find that the wisp of the Great Way, which was suspected to be the law of time, could not be perceived at all. Lin Sun was stunned, and his expression was uncertain. He was almost sure that this wisp of the Great Way, which was related to time, was not something he could touch now. Of course, even so, Lin Sun was not depressed. After all, this meant that he already had the opportunity to comprehend and control the law of time, and he would be able to comprehend it sooner or later. Unlike other people in this world, it was impossible for them to even have such an opportunity. The talent of devouring abyss turns out to be so terrible. It was also at this time that Lin Sun deeply understood how extraordinary the origin spirit vein he owned was. If I have a chance in the future, I can go to that huge black hole again. Lin Sun couldn't help looking back at the way he came. Everywhere was vast, and the scene was distorted. The boundary ship was moving in a tunnel, and the black hole had long been out of sight. But Lin Sun realized that if he encountered the terrible power like time and space light rain again in the future, it might be a supreme good fortune for him. After all, who could imagine that his origin spirit vein could absorb the law of time? Boom! Suddenly, the boundary ship shook for a while, and the next moment, as if it had lost its restraint, it suddenly got out of the great way of time. Everyone, we have arrived at the dark world. The voice of the vigorous middle-aged man sounded on the boundary ship, with a sense of relief and joy. It took them nearly 2 months to cross the unpredictable dark night star area, and they arrived smoothly without any danger. It could only be said that they were very lucky. On the boundary ship, all the passengers who were on tenterhooks all the way showed a relaxed smile. Lin Sun looked up. This was a quiet, vast starry sky. Billions of stars were dotted in it, turning into galaxies, nebulas, star jades, constellations. It was extremely spectacular. And in the depths of the extremely distant starry sky, there was a vast world floating there, like a huge eggshell upside down. The billowing, chaotic air was filled with countless stars around it. The bright divine light and auspicious rain fell around the vast world like the tide of the starry sky. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, even Lin Sun couldn't believe that the dark world, regarded as the land of evil and the chaotic zone, which even the emperors were afraid of, was so spectacular. Everyone, many of you come to the dark world for the first time. Before we arrive at our destination, I have a word to tell you. The voice of the vigorous middle-aged man sounded. In the dark world, the biggest rule is that there are no rules. It is called the land of evil by the outside world, where the most ferocious evil spirits in the world gather. All kinds of evil things will happen there, and there's no lack of unparalleled, ruthless people who are full of crimes and kill people like flies. There's only one way to survive there. Either you are strong enough, or you are strong enough. There are 3 kinds of people you can't provoke there: the descendants of the divine Sunshine Ancient sect, the descendants of the Hidden Land Realm, and the descendants of the Bronze Sparrow Tower. Of course, if you don't believe it, you could try to provoke them. I believe that death will come to you soon. Before coming here, I think you all have some understanding of the dark world. I won't say any more nonsense. Before we leave, I wish you live longer. As the voice fell, some people looked solemn, and some were lost in thought. Some people were dissatisfied and said, "What do you mean by wish us live longer? Aren't you cursing us?" The vigorous middle-aged man said indifferently, "When you can really survive in the dark world, you will find how lucky it is to live longer." While talking, the vigorous middle-aged man waved his hand, raised the flag of the hidden mist house. Whoosh! The next moment, a huge flag slowly rose from the bow of the ship and fluttered in the wind. The 3 ancient characters of the hidden mist house were engraved on it, and each character emitted a frightening fluctuation of the Great Way. "Let's go to the dark world." The vigorous middle-aged man gave the order. Everyone was still wondering why they had to raise the flag when they were about to arrive at the dark world. Wasn't it unnecessary? But the next moment, everyone understood. On the way of the realm ship, from time to time, an extremely fierce aura rushed out from the nearby stars like a beacon, emitting monstrous, killing intent. One could vaguely see that there were groups of figures on the dense stars along the way. So it's the ship of the hidden mist house. What a pity, I thought a group of fat sheep had come. Alas, these days are getting harder and harder. If we don't rob and plunder cultivation resources, do we have to live like this every day? Along the way, discussions like this sounded from different places from time to time, causing everyone on the realm ship to feel horrified. It was as if they had entered a world full of murderous intent and countless villains. There would be unexpected killing at any time. It was also at this time that they understood why the vigorous middle-aged man hung up the flag. It was to deter the ferocious people lying in ambush along the way. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion in his heart. The dark world really deserved its reputation. They had just arrived, but there were so many ferocious outlaws along the way. It could be imagined that if they hadn't taken the realm ship of the hidden mist house, they would have encountered waves of robberies as soon as they arrived here. At that time, how many people could survive? Chapter 2154. The starry sky was vast. Along the way, the world ship of the hidden fog house was stared at by countless fierce eyes. The passengers on the ship felt uncomfortable. It was as if they had suddenly entered a dangerous mountain. Everywhere they looked was full of murderous intent. The lean middle-aged man seemed extremely calm. He said, "Don't worry, everyone. The people we've seen along the way can only beg for food in this starry sky. They are not powerful people. I'm not boasting. In this dark world, under normal circumstances, no one dares to provoke the hidden fog house." His words were filled with incomparable confidence and confidence. But before everyone could feel at ease, a scream suddenly came from the world ship. Someone is coming." The lean middle-aged man was startled and looked up. In the distant starry sky, a lone and slender figure walked over. She wore a purple robe and had purple hair. She carried a spear on her back, and her beautiful face was full of indifference and coldness. She was clearly alone, yet when she walked over, the nearby starry sky silently roiled. Countless stars trembled and were on the verge of collapse. Some of the ferocious people lying in ambush on the stars didn't have time to dodge. Their bodies silently exploded and turned into bloody fragments. Purple clothes, purple hair, and carrying a spear, as she walked over, she was like the ruler of slaughter. The starry sky trembled because of her. The flying world ship stopped abruptly and couldn't move forward anymore. It was as if it was grabbed by an invisible hand. On the world ship, the lean middle-aged man's face was pale. His whole body was soaked in cold sweat. An indescribable fear spread through his body like a cold current. Previously, he had said with certainty that no one in the dark world dared to provoke the hidden fog house. But in the blink of an eye, an unexpected, great calamity struck. At this moment, the lean middle-aged man couldn't even speak. He didn't even dare to move a little. The other passengers on the ship were also terrified. They felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Who was this? How could she be so terrifying? The atmosphere was also extremely oppressive, making it difficult for people to breathe. In the distance, the woman in purple stood still. Her indifferent and emotionless eyes swept over the world ship. Everyone who was swept by her eyes shivered. It was as if they were being stared at by the eyes of the god of death. They were so shocked that their state of mind and will almost collapsed. "Evil creature, you finally appeared," the purple-clothed woman spoke. Her indifferent voice was still drifting in the air when she made her move. A slender, fair hand reached out and grabbed at the void. Boom! Around the realm ship, the void suddenly collapsed inward, like a crushed water ball. The terrible turbulence of the void splashed, producing an earth-shaking roar. Seeing that the realm ship was about to be crushed as well, a wisp of dazzling and dreamy order divine light swept over. In an instant, the collapsing and rumbling space suddenly stopped moving as if it had been shackled and frozen, and the terrifying, chaotic flow of energy in the vicinity had strangely stopped as well. Then they all dissipated and were annihilated. Only the realm ship that was in the violent turbulence was safe and sound. At the same time, a graceful and illusory figure walked out from the world ship and stood in the void. Strands of rules and order interweaved around his body, and a rain of light flowed like an immortal god. This person was naturally she. Whoosh! Lin Sun's tall figure rushed up and stood beside she. His handsome face was full of solemnity. He never imagined that this purple-clothed woman named Yin Xing would arrive so quickly. How did she find him? It turns out that someone is protecting you. In the distance, the purple-clothed woman, Yin Xing's eyes flashed with a strange and terrifying purple light. She stared at Shi and said indifferently, "It's just that you can't stop me." She waved his sleeve, and the realm ship of the hidden mist house was immediately moved away and disappeared from the star region. Then she said, "Yezi, take him away. Leave this bitch to me." The word bitch showed she's disgust and disdain for Yin Xing. Okay. Yezi rushed out and agreed without hesitation. Her figure emitted a wisp of sword light that wrapped Lin Sun up and swept towards the dark world in the distance. "You guys go after that evil creature." Yin Xing frowned, but didn't make a move. She just gave an order. Shi's appearance made her smell a trace of danger. She didn't dare to be distracted at this time. Yes, two figures appeared in the void. One was a man in a gray robe, and the other was an old man in a luxurious robe. Both of them exuded the terrifying aura of the Emperor realm. In the blink of an eye, the two chased after Yezi. She also frowned, but didn't make a move to stop them. "Now it's just you and me." Yin Xing took off the spear on his back and casually held it in his hand. His demonic purple eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. "How about it? Let's fight to the death." "Okay." She stretched her graceful and slender figure and said seriously, "I haven't fought with my full strength in a long time. If your performance disappoints me, I promise you that you will die a horrible death." The Star Scatterer sneered and said, "Sure." Her figure flashed, and she waved her spear. Boom! The starry sky instantly fell into chaos. Countless stars that were on the verge of collapse suddenly exploded. Turbulence spread in all directions like a tide. "Fighting here is a bit restrictive. Do you dare to come and fight?" Shi's figure fluttered. In the blink of an eye, she traversed the boundless starry sky. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Yin Xing took a step forward. With a bang, she broke through the restraints of the void and chased after Shi. Heavens, what kind of terrifying existence is that? At the very least, it should be a battle between emperors. Emperor realm? I think it should be ancestor realm. Didn't you see that when that woman appeared, the starry sky trembled and was awed by her power? Terrifying. Far away, the sturdy middle-aged man and the others on the realm ship, who had escaped with Shi's help, finally recovered from their shock and horror. Although Shi and Star Destroyer had already disappeared, their terrifying auras still lingered in this starry sky, causing one's soul to leave their body. "Why are you talking about this? Let's go." The lean middle-aged man ordered. In the starry sky, Yi turned into an escape light and flashed, moving through the void. "Yi, do you think anything will happen to Shi?" Lin Sun was worried. "She won't," Yi said without hesitation. Yi said without hesitation. "Although she lost some of her memories like me, I can feel that she must have been an extremely extraordinary existence in the past." Lin Sun sighed. "Yes, she is really incredible. She guarded the heaven-accessing place like a gatekeeper. She had spent a long time on the ancient path of the starry sky. Every time she appeared, everything would be solved. Even in the ancient desolation realm, she never showed any fear when facing the forbidden power of order. She had forgotten who she was. She only knew that when she woke up, she was already in the heaven-accessing place. A long, long time ago, Xian Shanshan, the head of the Xian family, had entered the heaven-accessing place and passed through the 9 levels of Green Cloud Path. He even opened the door to heaven a little. Although he failed in the end, Xian Shanshan was now the head of the Xian family. He had an overwhelming power and was regarded as the most powerful sword emperor in the starry sky. And she had witnessed Xian Shanshan's growth. From this alone, it could be seen how extraordinary Shi's origin was. However, Shi's opponents this time were also unimaginably powerful. They came from the other side of the starry sky in primitive times and chased Lu Boya and Luo Qingxuan until they could only hide in the mortal world. Lin Sun couldn't help but worry about Shi. "Lin Sun, they're catching up," Yi suddenly said. "One is at the 4th level of the Emperor realm, and the other is at the 5th level of the Emperor realm. If it's one-on-one, I have some confidence." If it's 1-on-2, I can only fight with my life. Lin Sun couldn't help but look back. In the starry sky behind him, two terrifying figures of the Emperor Realm tore through the shackles of the void like blazing rainbows and chased after him at an astonishing speed. Lin Sun had seen these two people on Mount Tong of the Shinji Taoist sect. They were both Emperor Realm monsters who took orders from the Star Destroyer. However, Lin Sun didn't expect their cultivation to be so terrifying. Lin Sun, there's one more troublesome thing, Yi said. The star region where the Dark World is located is also covered with the forbidden power of order. If we can't get rid of the two people behind us quickly, I'm afraid we'll be targeted by the forbidden power of order. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. The Star Destroyer was already terrifying enough. If the forbidden power of order also sensed it, it would alarm the nameless new Supreme Emperor. The consequences would be unimaginable. For a moment, Lin Sun's heart was heavy. They hadn't even reached the Dark World, but a great calamity had already struck. This was something Lin Sun hadn't expected. Lin Sun, I'll stay and stop the two people. You go to the Dark World alone. You seem to have made a decision. If I can survive, I'll go find you. His voice was as calm as before, but the determination in his words made Lin Sun's face change suddenly. He refused without hesitation. Yi, you must listen to me this time. It's nothing more than killing two old dogs chasing after us. You don't have to risk your life at all. Last time, when Lin Sun was besieged by the ice-devouring Sword Emperor and others, Yi had risked his life to save them. That scene was still vivid in his mind. How could Lin Sun let such a thing happen again? Yi said softly, Lin Sun, I'm a sword spirit. I'm not afraid of death. Since ancient times, the existence of a spirit is to block death for its master. Although you're not my master, I can die for you once. What's the harm? Lin Sun said flatly, so what? Who the fuck says that a sword spirit must die like an idiot? Remember, even if you're at the end of your rope, we'll fight to the death together. Yi was stunned. Lin Sun's angry words gave him an unprecedented impact. He was silent for a long time. Suddenly, he smiled brightly and said, I suddenly remember that someone told me before. What is it? He took a deep breath and said, it's better to live and die together than to live alone. In this way, even if we die, we'll be happy. Lin Sun agreed with him and said, that's what a man should do. But